What's up, listeners? It's Andrea. Today, that's not how that works. Shereese is just going to wait this whole thing out in the shuttlecraft, and we ask the question, Beverly, why would you touch that with your bare hands? Oh my God. Come nerd out with us.
Welcome to the TNG Podcast, the number one place in the Alpha Quadrant to geek out about all things Star Trek: The Next Generation. I'm your co-host, Shereese.
Hey, I'm your co-host, Andrea. Shereese, today we're talking Season 7, Episode 19, Genesis. This episode was written by Brannon Braga, but directed by Gates McFadden.
Woo-woo! I saw that when I was watching the credits. I was like, Gates McFadden? Oh my gosh, she did a great job.
She did an amazing job. This episode is the first Star Trek episode to be directed by a female cast member. The first one ever.
Holy moly.
And we won't see it for another 6 years when Roxanne Dawson directs Riddles in Voyager. So here's what happens in Genesis. Captain Picard and Data return to the USS Enterprise to discover the rest of the crew has de-evolved into primitive life forms, including spiders, amphibians, and cavemen. So yeah, I thought that was kind of neat. And before we even get into all this plot and everything, I'm very excited to announce that we have superfan and super guest Pip back to come and discuss Genesis and Barclay's protomorphosis syndrome. So Pip, welcome back. We're super excited to have you.
Thank you so much for having me back.
That was the most chill response.
Oh yeah, because obviously I'm naturally really chill. No, this is brilliant. The only problem I have is that I listen to your podcast so much that when you're talking, I'm so used to it being on the podcast, so I forget I have to respond. But hopefully I won't just sit here in silence the whole time.
You know, that's so funny because whenever I listen to our podcast, I always respond.
Yes. I know we do.
Whether I'm driving or in my room or whatever, if Andrea says something funny, I'll just start cracking up and be like, that was so funny, Andrea. And then on the podcast, I'll say, that was so funny, Andrea. It's pretty funny.
Well, Pip, so you're here for Genesis. We're getting to the end. We're already season 7, episode 19. What are your initial thoughts on this episode?
I actually really enjoyed it. I think when I was thinking about it, I thought it's obviously quite a ridiculous episode, but I was remembering it being like quite silly. But actually, I was able to suspend my belief a little bit more on the rewatch, and actually I really enjoyed it, particularly some of the designs of some of the de-evolved characters. I thought it was quite cool.
Yeah. Monster makeup is terrifying. It's terrifying. And it's so well done because he turns into a spider. And so he's got sort of like half his face. It kind of feels a bit like Orc from Lord of the Rings, like monster makeup, where it's like half of their face is there, but the other half is sort of disfigured. He's got all these eyes and like pincers. And
yeah, I think that was a really good call because we've heard before that the artists on the show have a hard time with certain kinds of creatures. So one type of creature is anything furry that always comes out looking weird, and I think they actually nailed it in this episode.
They did.
But then the other kind that they have trouble with is insect-like creatures. There's always some kind of problem. There's always they have to do a workaround or pick something different because insects are so difficult to recreate, I guess, which is why they went with the Borg looking like cyborgs instead of like insects, which is kind of what they wanted because it was so difficult. Now, that being said, I think it was a genius move for them to make Barclay a half spider, half human. So that way they didn't have to push too far into the let's make an insect looking creature that is not going to look like an insect and look really lame. Instead, they were like, how can we just take pieces of this creature, but still have a completely human shape underneath? And how can we make that make sense? And I don't know if this was a budgeting thing or a time constraint or actually a thought that they did intentionally, but man, did it work. Did it work? It looked so great. It totally worked for me. I'm totally cool with him being half and half. Sure, why not? And it was creepy and it was gross. And, you know, last week's episode, Andrea talked about the corpses in the wall, like the skeletons in the wall and how it freaked her out as a kid. And she was like, oh my gosh, like what if there's skeletons in my wall? So that never bothered me. But I will say this spider always bothered me. This is the thing that gave me nightmares as a little kid is giant half spider hitting the glass. Like that scene is probably my only memory from this episode as far as when it comes back to mind because it was so scary. So yeah, I agree with you, Pip. There are some aspects of this episode, especially now that I'm a scientist, which I wasn't when I was a little kid. There are some parts where I'm like, what the F? When they were doing some scientific explanations. I was like, all of this is wrong.
Science does not work that way.
However,
I was like, that's not how introns work at all.
That's not how any of this works. I was like, who was their consultant? They need to be fired. But that being said, like, this was not a silly episode for me. This was creepy and scary and like really dark for kids, I think.
I think so. I think so too. And I mean, we can talk about this more when Barclay's scene does show up, but part of what made Barclay's look work so well is we only saw him for a couple of seconds. You know, if he was like walking around and talking like that, you'd be like, we're starting to see like the cracks in the armor in his makeup. So he just, the best word I can think of is he squelched onto the glass and like left some like slime residue and like, and
this
then kind of like
heavy on the slime.
Yeah, it was pretty heavy on the slime. And also, you know, the audience builds so much in our mind, right? Like the show leaves it to the audience to build a lot of suspense in our mind. Like we started seeing like some silk threads like on the bridge,
there were
and
spider webs absolutely everywhere.
Spider webs. So then we're already like, okay, yeah.
Multiple times in this episode, I was like, all right, back to the escape pod for me. Peace out,
let's get the raid.
And I'm gonna go ahead and call in Starfleet. Have them handle all of this. I'm gonna be in the escape pod.
Yeah,
like I don't know what this is.
I think by showing it so little, like you said, Andrea, I think it's actually more effective than the wharf monster to me.
Yeah,
because it's, you know, and I think obviously Picard's meant to be really scared in that moment for plot reasons, but I think making it such a kind of big shock moment, it's brilliant.
Yeah, and you're right. And Picard does such an Patrick Stewart did such an incredible job at like portraying that like predator prey. Like he was starting to feel like a prey, right? So it's like he's starting to be hyper aware and nervous and jumpy and very much without the comedic aspect, like squirrel vibes, where it's like, what's that? Right? Like he's just very kind of afraid. So let's get into this. Number one, I'm going to say this term a lot, but Lieutenant Ogawa. Did you notice she's been promoted to lieutenant?
She was promoted in Lower Decks, and
she was promoted. Yep.
And now we get to see her again, which I feel like maybe she shows up visually in the entire show, probably like 5 or 7 times.
I know.
But it feels like she's in every single episode, and we're always so excited to see her.
I know.
This was no different. I was like, oh, it's Nurse Ogawa.
I know. The first thing I wrote in my notes was Nurse Ogawa in capitals and a heart. I was just so happy that like the first thing we saw, it was like, yes, Alyssa.
I know. And I wrote Lieutenant really big. So anytime she's in a scene, I'm like, oh, it's Lieutenant Ogawa. She's treating Riker because Riker was having himself a roll in the hay in the Arboretum with some
unfortunately, the hay was spiny.
The hay was cactus. It was Torellian death cactus, apparently, that he rolled into. So his back was all in cactus. Riker, you've got a bedroom. You could just go there with this girl. Like, you don't need to roll in the Arboretum.
They were on a date in the Arboretum, and the rolling was like a bonus of the date. I don't think that was the part they were expecting to do at that moment at that location. But man, those big
Riker's ready for that anytime.
Talk about ruining the mood. I mean, those spines in his back were like 6 inches long.
I know.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know whether you noticed, but like towards the end of this scene, even though he's not actually involved in what's happening in the action, Riker's just lying on a bed in the background with some other nurse or doctor just like pulling him out, like plucking him. It's so good.
I missed that.
It's awful. By the way, just sidebar. Riker's on a date with someone at the Arboretum, and the rolling is obviously because one thing led to another. So they're rolling around making out or whatever they're doing. Could you imagine on a Friday evening going to a nice walk after your long shift in engineering in the Arboretum with like your buddy or something, and there's Riker like making out and just rolling around with someone? How unprofessional could you possibly be? Seriously.
And the funny thing about that is we've seen the Arboretum many times. The Arboretum is like a 10 by 10 square.
Girl, it's one room, and it's a doorway that's an arch. So there's not even a fucking door that you can close and lock it for privacy.
The Arboretum has one tree. So and I don't even know why we're calling it that, but and some like hydroponics in the back.
It makes you wonder why, like, how he didn't spot the cactus, really.
He was distracted.
I guess maybe she was one of those like 6-breasted aliens or something, and his eyes were just too busy. I don't know. But I was like, Riker, what were you doing rolling around? Okay, whatever. But okay, so meanwhile, in sickbay, Barclay's visiting, and he is here to confirm his greatest fear, that he's got Tyrellian death syndrome, or he's got some kind of like blood disease. Like, he is one of those people who is so anxious and has clearly like read the DSM for some symptoms, and he's like, oh, I've got that. Yeah, my foot hurt that one day, and I got a piece of lint in my eye, so clearly these two things are connected, and I've got this thing. And it really, it's so funny to me, because this is the thing that these people are afraid of. Like, they're terrified of having this big diseases, but they also want confirmation that that's what they have, because it's like important. It's really weird to me, because like, you know, you go to the doctor and you're like, I'm dying, I've got this thing, and they're like, oh, you just have a splinter. And you're like, oh, right? Like, it just feels really odd to me that Barclay he wants to have a deadly disease.
He just wants to see the death coming. He wants to know what it is and how long he has. He wants to be able to plan his final days. So that's why he's like, okay, what is it? How bad is it going to be? Am I going to lose my skin? Am I going to go blind? Just let me know now. Like, so he can kind of collect all the symptoms and be ready. But she's like, there's nothing wrong with you. You're fine. Please stop coming to sickbay. But I guess it's important that he comes, because if he doesn't come, he's reading everything on his data pad and like working himself up into a lather. Yeah. So maybe you should come every single day just for me to be like, you're still good. You're still good. You're still good. Now, here's a cool thing. Beverly is like, okay, I'm going to run a microcellular scan on you, which we've seen a bunch of times before, or we've heard a bunch of times before. And usually the microcellular scan is something that the computer just does, or it can do it based on their transporter patterns or whatever. But in this case, she takes his finger and just touches it to a device, like somebody who's a diabetic checking their sugar, just touches the thing to a device and it just starts scanning. And I was like, what? We can do a microcellular scan of the entire body with the fingertip? Yes, please.
That's
Can we
what
get
I'm
this
talking about.
Kickstarter going?
This sounds like a Theranos thing. I'm not sure. We don't want to go there.
But it's future technology, so it actually works.
We do want to go there, Pip. We just don't want an absolute psychopath running a pretend fucking company. But the actual
we want it to be real.
Yeah, we want it.
Yeah, we want it to be real.
Whole story. Oh my God, I cannot read enough or watch enough about that whole thing. It was like.
It's life is stranger than fiction, right?
Yeah, con artists are always fascinating to me, because it's so the opposite of how I operate, that like for me it's like watching mafia movies, where I'm like, I can't even imagine occupying this kind of space and energy in the world. So I'm always fascinated by people who are like comfortable doing that, where I'm like, what is going on in your brain? Like, I don't understand what this is like. So yes, but it is Theranos.
So I love this microcellular scan technology. I think it is very cool. So while that's going, Data comes in and wants Beverly to check Spot. Spot, who is now a female cat. Spot, who was a male cat for most of the show.
Right?
Interestingly, I have a fact. My fact is 80% of ginger cats are actually male. So the chances of Spot being a girl are actually quite low.
Huh. And the chances of Spot being a male cat and then turning into a female cat are even lower, as it turns out.
There are always all these, like, if you go on Reddit and stuff, like, there are always all these theories that Data just, like, kills quite a lot of his cats. It's been a bit of a trial and error. So
he just like, replicates a new cat. Okay, but did you guys notice, by the way, how busy sickbay is? It's usually like one potted plant in the corner and some tissue samples. Yeah. I was like,
and one person who got hurt in the holodeck. I was like, oh no, like when it opened, I was like, oh no, there must be some battle that just finished.
That's what I thought.
And now they're like, you know, cleaning up all the people who got injured. But then we see Riker and he's just like, oh yeah, I was on a date. And you're like, okay, well, that's not like battle related. And then you see Barclay and he's just a hypochondriac. So you're like, that's not battle related. And then Data comes in and you're like, oh, I guess it's just a busy day in sick bay. Okay.
Which I think actually makes more sense, because this is a ship of 1012.
Yes.
So I'm like, it would make sense
that always like, being empty all the time.
Yeah. This makes more sense than like the one potted plant in the corner. Yeah. This makes a little bit more sense. But you know,
so it turns out Beverly is not only a doctor, she's also a vet. So
I guess she would have to be
on that. Would she though? They've got like 1,000 people on this ship.
That's true.
They don't have anybody who knows anything about...
if Troy could be a Beta Z and a like hypnotizer,
a hypnotist and a linguist,
yeah, I guess,
and a linguistic specialist,
yeah, I guess.
So Beverly comes over and Spot's pregnant, and I was like, what? this doesn't make any sense. Except for I was like, this is why they needed to make her a girl a couple episodes ago so that they could do this in this episode. Or they could have just found a different pet from somebody. Anyways, so Spot's pregnant. And I was like, where did she find another cat on board? How many cats are running around this ship? Which we find out later.
They do answer it, yeah.
and so we find that Spot's going to give birth like any day now. She's ready to pop, which is weird.
Is it weird?
Then we find out. I feel like it is.
I'm like, it kind of seems like a normal thing that animals do.
Sure, but it seems a little weird in space. It's one thing if it's like your neighborhood cat. Yeah, Shereese, if it's your neighborhood cat
Shereese,
that's outside,
when
sure.
a mummy cat and a daddy cat love each other very much.
And it's the daddy cat's birthday.
They have a special kind of cuddle.
Sorry. It said a special kind of cuddle.
I'm pretty sure that's how the facts of life are explained to me.
Yes.
Yeah.
God, we are only in like the minute, and we're not even at minute
we
one.
We haven't got to the titles.
Like 2 seconds in. Okay, so yes, Spot is about to have kittens, and Lieutenant Ogawa scans Spot and tells Data that everything looks great. And she was like, Data, do you want to know the sex of the kittens? And I was like, I assume it's a mix, right? Like you have like 5 kittens,
some boys and some girls. That's
girls.
The
like
sex
I don't need to. There's okay, whatever.
And plus, we don't know how many of them are going to make it, so we'll just wait.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing with like litters of animals. Yeah. I just figured, Data, why not live in 2023 and have a crazy over-the-top sex reveal wherein we start a fire that wipes out life on an entire planet? Because that's how I feel like gender reveals have been going the last few years, where like massive forest fires are started because somebody set off a sparkler that was blue or some shit. And it's like,
and imagine a gender reveal for like 6 kittens. Like, what would that even look like?
A couple of boys and a couple of girls. Congratulations.
Okay.
Yes. And Lieutenant Ogawa lets slip that she's also pregnant. Hooray for her.
Which is so cute because we did find out in Lower Decks when she got that promotion that she's been dating a guy for a while and they were really into each other. So it sounds like it went very well. Good for her.
By the way, I'd kind of like to dig a little deeper into Alyssa's marital situation with this guy, because in Lower Decks, remember how Alyssa was talking to Beverly and she's like, Andrew's been really distant. He keeps saying he's like working really late, but I don't know. He just seems kind of like distant. And then later in the Lower Decks episode, when the senior staff are playing poker, Beverly and Deanna are like, well, we saw Andrew in 10 Forward, like kind of canoodling with another woman. So like, what's that about? And then at the end of Lower Decks, Alyssa's like, we're getting married. I was like, but hold on. These things are not lining up. And then when Beverly was like, you're pregnant. Oh my gosh. How did Andrew take it? And she was like, Andrew was kind of out of it. I'm like, I don't really like Andrew that much. I'm not going to lie. Like,
hang on. You don't know. Maybe the woman he was with in 10 Forward was a wedding planner.
Oh, could be. Or like a best friend to pick out a ring or something.
Because they just saw the two of them together. They didn't see them making out or holding hands or anything like that. It just was suspicious that he was with another woman in 10 Forward.
Oh,
which
could be.
Yeah, but I feel like that's true, because if he was trying to be kind of like under the radar, why would he go to 10 Forward of all places?
Yeah.
When you go literally anywhere else.
Being like really distant,
you want to be under the radar.
I was like, okay. I don't know. I'm not feeling really strong about this marriage.
Not a big fan of Andrew.
Well, a person who does not exist.
Not everybody can like Andrew.
Why are we having this conversation about an off-screen character?
I'm just saying.
He's not even cute.
So while Ridge is freaking out about something or another, he's got like an elevated level of this or that. Beverly's like, okay, you have this like Uridelian flu, which humans have a natural immunity to. You're experiencing mild symptoms because the T cells in your body that would normally fight the infection are dormant. And he's like, oh, I knew it. I had a dormant gene. She's like, dude, shut the fuck up. You have one dormant gene out of 100,000. Like, stop making yourself like,
yeah, it's not that big of a deal.
Stop putting yourself on death's door, right? So she's like, I'll activate the gene with a synthetic T cell hypospray. Done. Go get some rest and stay away from the medical database. Like, just go away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for future reference, T cells don't activate genes. So that was already like, that was wrong.
This whole time I was like, Shereese as a microbiologist is going to be having so many issues with this episode.
Yeah. But so I'm like, who did they consult with? Because T cells do work in your immune system and they do fight off infections. That was true.
Yes.
But T cells activating genes, doing anything with your DNA, that's not how they work at all. So I was like, you're injecting a synthetic T cell that's supposed to activate some genes for other T cells. T cells can stimulate T cells, but directly, not like through genes. So I was like, okay, well, it sounds like it's like when you Google something and you know just enough to be dangerous.
Yeah.
So I'm like, they've got some of the words right, but like the order's not making sense here. But okay, here I was totally fine. It was later on when they explained how everything happened that I was like, okay, all right, we're going to do a deep dive here. Let me just explain to everybody why all of this is wrong.
Girl,
so we'll get to that soon.
I started doing a deep dive and then I was like, what am I doing? I'm a marine biologist deep diving into Shereese's territory. I'm just going to let her run. She's going to run. I
didn't even need to deep dive. I just wrote down everything I know. And I was like, this and also this. Oh, and this too. But so here we're like, so big idea is she's injecting him.
PhD.
She sure is. So Beverly injects Reg with this synthetic T cell that's going to activate this dormant other T cell, this gene for this dormant other T cell that's going to fight off this flu and he'll be totally fine. I feel like, there should be a hyper spray for this without even needing anything else.
Like an hyper spray
for everything.
For the Iridillian flu, where it's like, boom, done. We don't have to be fucking with your genes.
Why do we need an immune system at all at this point?
Yeah.
Yeah, they just go, psh, and you could be poisoned to death and they just hypo spray you in the neck and you're fine. So, I don't know.
You're right about that.
That's what happens. So next we go to the bridge and they're doing field tests on a new weapon system that Worf is so proud of and so excited about.
I love it.
He's like, I did this myself. It's like, okay, buddy, you did. Look at you go.
He looks happier about this than he's ever looked with Alexandra. I can't help but notice.
Wouldn't you though?
Never miss an opportunity to crap on poor Alexander.
Hate that kid.
So
he's actually
it's not his fault. He's annoying.
It's not his fault at all. It's really not his fault. I love that Alexander's not even in this episode and we're still shitting on it.
I don't think we see him anymore, actually, right?
No, we do.
We do in that episode. I like that episode. I like that episode. Yeah. Okay. So anyways, he fires 3 torpedoes. 2 of them hit their mark and one of them goes AWOL.
Yeah.
And then Picard's like, okay, well, abort and destroy. Like just like key in the code to tell that torpedo to blow itself up, which I was like, that's cool.
Yeah.
Like that's what a great
remote
safety feature.
Self-destruct is really smart.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the safety feature doesn't work. Where I was like, well, that kind of defeats the purpose of that safety feature right there.
Sure does.
So not only that, so the Picard's like, okay, well, just shoot it from here. And they're like, oh, it's out of range.
What the hell does that mean?
Like, well, I sure hope there's no ship flying by wherever the torpedo happens to be going.
Or small lunar base or some shit. Like, come on.
Yeah, getting blown out of space for no good reason. Because your military test asteroid belt managed to miss every other asteroid in the entire asteroid belt.
This feels like a very lower decks gag where it would then cut to some really unassuming, I don't know. I'm trying to think of some Orions or something.
Some some miners who are pulling out, or something, and suddenly they blow up, and they're like,
this little captain's like, today is going to be a great day. Just absolutely.
Oof.
Yep.
Oh, damn.
So, so they can't take the ship to go find it because of said asteroid belt. So Picard's like, you know what? Me and Data will take a shuttle, and we will go and retrieve it. And Riker's like, well, you don't have to do, anybody could take the shuttle. The captain doesn't need to go take the shuttle.
That was my thought.
I don't need to be here for this.
I need a break.
I need a break. And Riker's like, understood. You go, you have a good time, make a sandwich, enjoy yourself.
Yeah.
So it's sad when you're so frustrated with work that this is the kind of break you need.
Where you're like, a torpedo's gone astray. I'm going to take a shuttle. Let's go. Also, did you need to bring Data with you too? It feels like this is a one-man operation, right? You shuttle over, you tractor beam it in, and you come
but they
back.
Usually take another person. You could have taken anybody.
You never know. But yeah, so while this is happening, Data's like, well, I got to leave Spot because she's so pregnant with Barclay because we don't know. It could be a couple days. It could be a week. We don't know. And Barclay is the only person that Spot likes, which I think is kind of funny.
I hate this because I find Barclay really annoying. And I'm like, of all the great people on this ship, really? Barclay?
This guy? This fucking guy?
I love it because Barclay has such a hard time making friends. So this cat is like his one friend who really likes him without having to be forced to like him because they work together. So I was like, oh, it's kind of like with Alexander and Luoxana. How you're like, oh, they both have a friend. I think that's really sweet because nobody else has any patience for them. So they can just be a team of 2. So I felt like that with Barclay and Spot. Nobody has time for Spot. Nobody has patience for Spot. Nobody likes that cat. And nobody likes Barclay either. So I was kind of like, this makes sense to me. Like, I think this is
it was like
this is
the
a sweet
island
little
of
friendship.
misfit toys. They're both misfits together.
Honestly, I think
Yeah.
Spot would probably like more people if they held the damn cat properly. They're always just holding
Yes.
it up like Simba from The Lion King, you know. And it's like, cats don't like that. Don't do that. So
That's
annoying.
hysterical. I love that you notice that, as you have 2 cats currently, right? So
yeah.
I love that you noticed that, because I wrote in my notes, that cat looks ready to murder when Data's holding it in his hands, like up, just sort of like around like the armpits and kind of lifting it.
Yeah.
That cat was like so pissed looking. And I was like, yeah, well, I mean, I'm not a cat person really, but like I would be mad too if somebody just picked me up by my armpits and just hoisted me in the air like that. I'd be like, no. So off they go to retrieve the torpedo, and Barclay's like, you know, doing all that shit. Now, Worf is like, there's something going on with Worf at this point, because I understand he worked really, really hard on this weapon system, and he's embarrassed that it went awry during a test. He's frustrated.
But he's so much more snappy than he's ever been before.
Yes. And
he's not just like, oh, like I need to fix this, or like, darn it, I'm so mad. He's like extra, like you need a nap and a snack.
Yeah,
like he's that extra level.
Yeah, yeah. Get yourself a Slim Jim and have something to eat or something real quick. Like, he's running this analysis, and Riker pops over to see if he can lend a hand to Worf, but Worf is like, using the 90s appropriate term, Worf tells him to back off his jock. He's like, can you get off me? Go away. And Riker's like, look,
must you stand so close?
Yeah,
why are you asking me more questions? And Riker's like, go ahead and take a break.
Yeah, like just
go ahead and take a break. That's
that.
an order. Get out of here.
Yeah, so he does order
Worf
him.
is like, that's fine.
And which,
like, oh,
which of course, a break for Worf consisted of going to 10 forward and eating every assortment of the most disgusting looking food imaginable. Like, don't get me wrong, I do like an octopus dish. I don't want,
but not the entire tentacle chopped right off the octopus,
like raw and like the word of this episode is squelchy, because everything is like squishing and shit. And Deanna pops by in like a pajama set with a cardigan and just gobbling water down like it's going out of fashion. And
I will say her holographic cup was really cool.
It was. I noticed that. Really nice sort of iridescent.
I was like, cool. I want that cup. And it looked like it was maybe plastic. So I was like, oh, this is the cup for me. Can't break it. So I was super excited about that. I was like, I could drop it all I want. It's going to be just fine. But the food reminded me of, I think it's season 1 when Riker did that exchange program with the Klingons.
Yes.
And he was like eating Klingon food to like get used to it or whatever. I think it was the same assortment of delicacies.
Mm-hmm.
And oh my gosh, is it disgusting?
Yeah.
And the way that Michael Dorn, the actor who plays Worf, interacts with it is very compelling. Like, he makes it look even more gross. The way he like picks it up and squeezes it and twists it and like slams it and stuff. It's like he did a great job at making
flying everywhere. Yeah, it's really gross.
He did a great job making it look even more like visceral.
That
than
moment
it does.
where Worf like is eyeing up the waitress when she comes over,
leering at her,
but with his mouth full of food. It was like the most grim thing I've seen since Denethor in Return of the King.
I was just gonna say Denethor eating the tomato in the Return of the King. Yeah, so disgusting. Yes, you know what I did think was interesting though is Deanna pops by. And she's annoyed that he didn't wait for her to eat, whereas she comes by and she does that very passive.
But if I saw him eating that, I'd be like, I'm good. I'm going to have a sandwich in my quarters. You finish that.
Totally.
But would not have sat down and joined him.
No, absolutely not. But she does. The point that I am making though is that like she does pop by and she's like, thanks for waiting, where I was like, they more and more seem like they're in a relationship,
a couple.
Yeah where it's like, thanks for waiting, and he's like, I was hungry, and it's like, at no point, by the way, through all his slamming and smashing and snapping at her and juices flying everywhere, is she like, Worf, something is like abnormally wrong with you. You're not just like you're not Klingon crabby, you're like going off the deep end, like something is wrong, right? Worf is belching. And at no point is she like, what the hell, man? So she's like, you know what? It seems like you need some rest. So he's like, fine, and like storms off. And she's like, well, I didn't mean right now.
But she's also not being herself, right? She's just the fact that she doesn't notice anything, or she notices it and she just says like, you're excused when he belches. But that's it. Shows that she's off, and she's like drinking water, drinking water. She gets all this caviar because she wants something salty. And Worf is like, caviar? That sounds disgusting. And she's like, are you kidding me?
Look at yourself.
Plate. Yeah.
Look at yourself, man.
What are you talking about? I would not eat lunch with either of these people right now.
This one threw me off, though, because she said she was craving salty food, but she's also drinking gallons and gallons of water, which kind of like undo each other. And I was like, girl, like, I would think she'd be like, give me some cucumber salad or something that's like juicy, or like watermelon or something that's like water heavy. Yeah,
but it makes sense with the whole amphibian fish thing, the idea of like eating something fishy. So
the fishy makes sense. Yeah.
That's the fishy part. Like if it was just like salty fries or something, it wouldn't make sense. But they're trying to like hit on that. Like what could she eat that's something you would actually eat in a pond?
Yeah. Now,
so that's what they went with.
Now in his quarters, Worf is having some kind of episode and like rips his blankets in his sleep. I was like, good Lord. And then he starts we start hearing this like heartbeat drum in the background.
Yeah.
And he starts ripping his bedding apart, and he creates kind of like
running around his room and like hitting things. Yeah. And he creates a nest. And this is like the start of creepy for me. This is the start of like, I don't know what's going on with Worf, but we need a lock on this door.
Yeah, he like rips some of the mattress
creepiness
apart and lays on it.
Some of the creepiness got kind of ruined for me by, when he first gets up and he's running around the room, he keeps disappearing out of frame. And then there's like a pause, and then he'll run back across to the other side and disappear again. I just kept it.
That was a bit funny.
I found that really funny.
That was a bit funny. It was kind of like those cartoons where they're like chasing a character down the hallway and they're like in one door, out one door.
I guess you probably won't know the reference. If I said the Benny Hill music, would you know what that is?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. It's like that. You just imagine people chasing each other around.
Yes. It's very like slapsticky comedy.
Yeah.
Now in main engineering, Barclay is running Riker through these changes in the forward sensor array that he's made. And Barclay is being like super speedy. He is like Barclay on crack. And he's just like, and I've done this
Barclay
and this and then and I've done this, and Riker is like, Riker seems kind of like haggard and tired, and it doesn't quite hit yet how like slow he seems to be mentally processing things. He just seems kind of exhausted and run down. And I'm like, yeah, I feel like that on Fridays anyway, where I'm like, what are we doing today?
This is a perfect representation of how I am at work all the time.
Yeah,
where I'm like, I just don't know what's happening at all. In fact, the worse he got, the more I identified.
Yeah.
Like, maybe not all the way to turning into some sort of ape, but yeah.
I did really like the kind of the contrast and the juxtaposition between Barclay and Riker and Geordi. I think that was done really well. You see Barclay just talking fast and kind of skittering actually around the room. And you see Riker kind of slowing down and kind of having a hard time understanding. And then you see Geordi, who's also slow, not quite as slow as Riker, but he's also slow and he's kind of tired and he's not moving quite as fast. And I just really like that contrast to their normal speed because it helps you go like, oh, something's different.
Yeah.
We don't know what's different because with Worf, we see he's just gone off the deep end.
Yeah.
And with Troi, we know something's weird because why is she wearing her pajamas in 10 forward?
Yeah.
But with Barclay versus Riker versus Geordi, you're like, okay, this is a different kind of wrong. So whatever's going through the ship or whatever's happening in people is not affecting everybody the exact same way. And I think that was a really
interesting.
Nice touch.
Yeah. Well, you know what I noticed too is like we never got to see a Geordi transformation.
We did not, nor did we see Beverly.
Yeah, he didn't see. Well, Beverly makes more sense because she was put in stasis because Worf, Jurassic Park venom toxin spit at her, but like, plus also she was, thank you, Pip. Pip did the little frills on the side of the dinosaur. But that makes sense because she was directing the episode. So they're like, we need you to be off camera. But like Geordi, I was like, Geordi, what happened to you, buddy? Does your visor somehow like preclude you from something? Like we didn't.
No,
like,
I'm sure he transformed.
We didn't see him.
I know, but I'm sure it would have been amazing. Because I think all their transformations were just really they were subtle, like more hinted at than actually shown for a lot of the characters, which I think was absolutely the way to go. So next you see we're on the bridge, and Troi is shivering. So Troi has the bridge because she passed her commands test.
Woo-hoo!
I think I don't know last week or the week before, a couple episodes ago. And so now she's got the bridge, so good for her. But she is freezing cold, and she tells the computer to turn up the heat and humidity. And Worf is just like, belay that order. And Troy's like, what the heck are you doing? And he's like, you've already turned up the heat 3 times. It's too hot. And she's like, well, just live with it. Computer, carry out my orders. And I was like, go ahead, Commander, go. But also I was like, this is the problem with any workspace. with central air and central heating is this right here. There's always somebody who's going to be really cold. That's me. There's always going to be somebody who's really hot. There's always going to be somebody who's fine no matter what. It's just like this constant struggle. So she just, after changing the humidity and heat again, she's like, you know what? I need a bath. Okay. So then she just goes to her quarters and you're like,
she says you have the bridge, but I'm like, who are you talking to? Worf?
She talked to Worf.
Okay,
yeah,
I was
Worf.
like, who the girl? This could be literally anybody.
And you're just like, okay, well, who announces that they need a bath in the middle? Well, I don't know. Maybe this is how their work schedules go. You can just pop out for a bath anytime you need. They're not in a battle right now. All is well.
I mean, it just seemed like she was starting to without realizing like what's happening among like the rest of the crew. She just kind of looks like she's got like a cold or a flu, that she's like coming down with something, you know, where you're like, you look miserable. Yes, go take a hot bath.
And you look contagious.
Yeah, you look contagious.
Go ahead and go back to your
AF.
quarters.
Like, go get some Tylenol, lock the door, and just go to bed. We'll see you in a couple of days.
Pop on the diffuser.
Yeah.
And you just stay right there.
Yeah. Now, in the Jeffries tube, Geordi has found some sort of solvent is corroding through the panels and like the bulkheads. And he's like, you know what? We need to run a full spectral analysis on it. But you're right. He is kind of moving slow. He seems like he's sort of winded and tired. And he's like, yeah, we're going to run that full spectral analysis. But like, first, let's take a quick break. And Barclay's like, you go ahead, sir. I'm on it. Boom. Like, he's gone. He's like Speedy Gonzalez. I was like, okay. All right.
Okay.
Then.
So in this scene, Barclay and Geordi go into the Jeffries tube. There's a hole in the floor. And so some pipe has gotten moved or whatever.
Something.
And Barclay's like, aha, I'll fix it. And he pulls the pipe through the floor and plugs it into the wall. And he's like, aha, it's fixed. Right. And then Geordi's like, but wait, what put the hole there in the first place? And he's like, I don't know. Who knows? It could be anything. And so Geordi's like, he scans and he's like, this is some kind of acid or whatever. And he's like, I wouldn't be surprised if this was biological. And I was like, wait a darn minute.
Yeah, hold on.
This is giving me alien vibes. Some biological thing is melting through the floor. Where are the escape pods? I'm out. I am not staying for any part of me to be dissolved by some biological agent. Like, it'd be different if they said, oh, some pipe burst or some chemical leaked from some wiring inside the ship. Like, that's one thing. But a biological solvent that's melting the floor, that's disgusting and horrifying. And I'm out of here. So this is already when I'm escaping the ship.
And don't think for a second Shereese would not leave, because when we did that camping trip and that old man fell down and disoriented in the middle of the night and kind of like stumbled into our campsite, me and a couple of other women were like, let's get you situated and figured out what campsite you're supposed to be at. Because it's like 3 a.m. You have no shirt on, no shoes. It's like, 35 degrees out. It's cold at night, Fahrenheit.
That's the start of a horror film right there, Andrea.
Well, see, he was like bleeding a little bit from his head, and he's like, he was slurring. So he was like, what? It immediately became clear that it's like he's in some sort of medical distress. Like, let's get, like, he was there camping with his son. So I was like, let's just give me your campsite number and we'll go over and get your son and come have him get you. It's 3:30 in the morning. Shereese grabbed her car keys and her jacket and just went and sat in her car the rest of the day until the sun came up.
Yep. She would survive the zombie apocalypse. You have failed.
I will say I did get the son and I got him over, and he like collected him and they got like an ambulance to like check him out because he had like fallen down or whatever. But yeah, Shereese was like, no, it's 3:30 in the morning. I am going to sit in my car. And her car was like blocked in from all of our other cars, from everybody who was camping with us. So she just sat on the car until like the sun came up. She didn't get out of the car till like 8 a.m. Shereese was like, nope, corrosive material, organic. I'm out. I'm out.
There's more parts to that story, but that was Andrea's view of it, which I did not realize that that's what she saw until she told me that story. And I was like, oh, that's what you thought I was doing. Oh, that's not at all what I was doing,
really?
But that is what it looked like. Yeah, no, but that is what it looked like. In this situation, I would absolutely be out.
Was like,
If it makes you feel better, I did something so horrifyingly embarrassing at my work that I still cringe about this.
Oh, no.
Yeah, well, in the staff kitchen, somebody said, there's a really bad smell in here today. Like, right, okay. And we opened up a cupboard and there was this really weird kind of yellowy green liquid pooled in there. And I was like, what the hell? So
primordial slime ooze. That's what I'm thinking.
Exactly. And I was like, well, I have no idea why it would be that. I was looking up to see whether it was dripping from the ceiling. Couldn't figure it out. But just to reference, I'm not completely insane. We do work. I work for a university, and this is like a hospital site, a medical site.
Okay.
And although we're in a library, so you wouldn't think. But I thought, okay, maybe there's a lab upstairs. I don't know.
Sure, these are all very
regular
things.
I told all my staff, like, please don't touch it because we don't know what it is.
Smart.
And I asked for the estates team, like, can you please come and check what it is? Because, we don't know what it is and it's really bad.
Was it like
I-
mustard or something?
Oh no, it was worse than that.
Oh no. Oh no.
So I got
Shereese's face is looking so afraid right
I know. And
Yeah.
there was me sort of saying to them, like, I don't want any of my stuff to touch it. It's a priority because we don't know what it is and it could be a hazard. And then it turned out that there were all these long life cartons of soy milk on the top shelf, and one of them had exploded and it had just gone sour essentially, and it stank. And so the poor man from Estates was like, "Hi Pip, it was an exploded can of soy milk. I'll leave you to clean the rest of that up." And I was so embarrassed that I'd wasted all their time, made this big song and dance about it being like a priority.
No.
So I
Hold
cleaned
on,
the entire thing
up.
up.
But what if it had
What
been
if it
something
was?
dangerous? You
Yeah,
didn't
it
know.
could have been.
Well,
No,
maybe I
yeah,
should
you
have
shouldn't feel
looked
bad at all.
2 shelves up and seen the soy milk and made an educated guess, but that's not my vibe. So, so I think avoiding risk is something that that I'm good at, but maybe sometimes too much.
Well, listen, you've got head and shoulders above the rest of the medical team on this episode, because Worf's got that venom sac and Beverly's like, "What's that?" and starts touching that shit with her bare hands.
So you don't know how many times I wrote in my notes, so and so touch this with their bare hands. So and so touch this without gloves. So and so touch this without
with your
gloves.
bare hands. This is so disgusting.
No, it's the slime. It's the slime on Troy's door that Picard just touches with his finger, and he's like, "Oh, what is this interesting substance, dude?"
Oh, it just seemed
I
too
thought it was condensation.
It was condensation.
No, it's slime. No, on the outside of the door that's running down the door.
Yeah,
that was condensation.
There was condensation on the inside. That was slime.
No,
Condensation
that
doesn't
was the condensation.
goo.
No, it was. I'm pretty sure it was. Okay, but either way, yeah, no. But like, let's just not go touching shit with our bare hands. But Beverly's over here putting neural stimulators on John Q with his like on his bare fucking brain. So it's like,
You
what
were going to bring that up. I was just going to say.
This whole episode is like a training video of like, pause. Where did they go wrong?
Mm-hmm.
They touched it with their bare hands
from
again.
COVID.
Yeah, seriously. This was so gross. Anyways, so next scene, we're in the bridge, and we're on the bridge, and Riker seems confused. Like the guy who's kind of at comms is saying, "What should we tell them about our training exercise?" They're asking when we're going to be there, blah, blah, blah. And Riker's just like, "What are you even talking about right now? Like, what is going on?"
Mm-hmm.
He seems really confused. And if you see in that scene behind him at the tactical station where Worf usually is, there's this lady who has this really cool kind of like mohawk. This lady, this extra, has been on the show since season 1.
Oh, is it
Really?
Tracy?
And she is always in the background somewhere. And I was so excited to see her in First Contact because we recently rewatched that movie. And I was like, that's lady. So I was like, how cool is it that they, and a couple other extras that have been on since season 1 were in that movie.
That's awesome.
Like they were like in part of the crew, when they all had guns and they were walking through the hallway. I'm like, that's brown guy and mohawk lady and, whatever. And I just wanted to just say, I love this. This is why we need real extras and not CGI'd people, because I love the fact that it's season 7 and she's still going strong, working in tactical, pushing the buttons, doing whatever. And I just think it makes such great cohesion. Doesn't really have anything to do with the plot, but I just want to point that out. And she didn't die in this episode. So whoop, whoop.
Yeah.
So we see something's weird with Riker. We head over to Troy's quarters and she's taking a bath in her uniform because sometimes they do stuff in their uniform on this show. And I just want to say that tub she was in is everything.
Yes.
And also, where the F is this tub supposed to be?
Yes.
In their tiny little quarters. Because you know how like their sinks are in the wall and they tap the wall and then the sink comes out and they can like wash their hands or whatever. And they have these sonic showers that clean them with sound. So I guess there's no water in that. So I'm like, where's this bath at? Is it in the floor? Is it also in the wall? Like, that's what I needed more information on. And that's what I didn't get.
Maybe she replicated
That's what I really want to know.
It's like I really fancy a bath.
It is a really nice bath. It really is. It's like a 2-person bath that kind of has like a corner, it seems like.
Yeah, and it's got the waterfall, like water that comes into it. It's just so cool.
Peak 90s right there. The waterfall
So
like
cool.
faucet.
Mhm.
God, I wanted those so bad when I was a kid. And then
I still want that.
if you see that in a house now, it's all like crusted over because like, mineral deposits and stuff. And you're like,
yeah,
that kind of looks like
that's,
shit.
I mean, that's everything. Everything looks bad over time, but at first it looks amazing.
It does look
I
super
still want
cool. Yeah. So she's got, this is when Worf comes in and she's like, what are you doing here? And Worf is like, I have to be near you. And then he fucking grabs her and bites her on the face.
I couldn't believe this. It was like,
So
Worf's goes
violent.
all rapey, and it's like Deanna
Yes.
cannot cut a break. Like all of her storylines, like there must be something
How many
abusive.
times has this woman been sexually, physically, emotionally abused and assaulted? And they always do this to like the pretty people on the show, usually the pretty women. If you're a beautiful woman, you've been raped a bunch of times on a show. If you're ugly, by like beauty standards or whatever, like people just leave you alone. And it's like, yeah, okay, so what is the message you're telling people?
But I think the reason why it was Troy, well, it's always Troy, but a second reason why it was Troy is because they're doing this whole Worf and Troy in a relationship thing, right? They're playing this up. So they're still putting them together as a couple. I think if this would have been Worf and Troy a couple episodes ago, it would be so random and so out of the blue. But because they've been working this whole like, oh, they're having lunch together. They're kind of a couple where you could be like, okay, there's some kind of connection here, but it's still really weird. And when he draws blood from her, that's when his like eyes kind of clear and he's like, oh shoot, what did I just do?
Yeah.
It's like, and thank God he stopped there before he like ate her.
Right?
God.
Like she's got her fingers clasped onto her cheek and there's just blood running between her fingers. I was like, oh my God. So in sickbay, Deanna is freezing cold and getting treated for that bite that looks absolutely horrific. Her temperature.
Yeah, the bite goes from like her ear to like her chin.
Yeah, it's like
I'm pretty sure Worf's mouth isn't that big.
I was just gonna say
it can't be that big, but maybe he would have had to bite her like
yeah.
It's like a shark bite on her face. Like it's ridiculous. It goes from one side of her face all the way to the other side. But man, is it horrific and like so traumatizing. Like you just got bit on the face
by your boyfriend.
This is terrifying. Yes.
By your boyfriend.
So
by anyone.
So Lieutenant Ogawa is telling Beverly that several other crew members have complained about the temperature setting. Some are freezing, some are feverishly hot. And Beverly says this line that is my MVP line of the entire episode. Call Dr. Salar and Dr. Hakopian and get them on this right away. And I was like, yes, I am so happy that the writers kept dropping her name as though she's still there. And in my mind, still played by the inimitable Susie Plaxon. I was like, she's still there. Dr. Salar, when are you going to see more of you? And Dr. Hakopian is a new name, but it's a really cool sounding name. I was like, that tracks. Yeah, my doctor's name would be Dr.
And now
Hakopian.
we know there's 3 doctors on the ship, which is great.
At least.
Because we're always like, why is there only one? Yeah. So I loved it. Yeah, I loved it too.
And then we've got a scene here that is so terrifying and confusing for so many different reasons. Because Beverly goes to speak to Worf, but Worf is like staring at the wall and seems like he cannot understand her at all. And
she's looking at her while she's talking, but he's looking at her
as though she's a chair. It's like,
well, he's like staring at her intently. It's very weird. Like it's like he doesn't understand what she's saying, but kind of like a baby. Like a baby would track you. Like they would stare at you and look at you, but they don't know what you're saying or what you're doing. But they keep looking at you. And that's what he's doing. So he's not opening his mouth. He's not talking, but he's looking at her. And she's like, hello?
Well, see, but at
Can you hear me? And he's not.
But at no point, though, reacting. Is she like, hold on, let's run like a neural analysis or something, because she's like, Worf, can you understand me? And he says nothing. And then she just keeps talking to him. I was like, Beverly, stop. Stop. Like, he clearly cannot fucking understand you. Like, there's something is terribly wrong.
But also, sure, I know that there's a security guy with him, right? That she says, like, and waves him away. But, like, if he's just randomly violently attacked someone,
let's keep the security guard closer. Or does he need to be in sick bay?
Yeah, or sedate him.
Why do you need to be? Why do you need to be
this in his face?
Yeah, you don't need to be in the same room as the person you just fucking attacked. Like, get him away from her.
Blame, but I kind of feel like Beverly made some bad choices here.
She really, really did.
Yeah,
she really did. And she wasn't the same thing
when he was like, when she was like, oh, let me go check on Worf after she was checking on Troy. I was like, yeah, same thing. Where I was like, why are they in the same room? Why is he even in this room with other people when he just attacks someone? Like, granted, he was out of his right mind, but he's probably still out of his right mind. So put him somewhere by himself, isolate him, put a force field or something. Because what if he just bites you on the face? Like, you need to like calm him down or figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
But this was just like, come on down to sick bay, buddy. Let's see what's going on.
Let's talk about this.
So she realizes something's weird. So she's like, you know what? Let me just scan him and see what's going on. And when she goes to pick up the tricorder, she turns and sees he's got these disgusting boils on his neck. And so she's like, wait, let me figure out what this is before I even do what I was going to do. At this point, I looked away for the entire rest of the scene.
Because she touches that shit with her bare fucking fingers. Beverly, your fired.
She's palpitating these pustules with her fingers.
So gross.
And I actually thought they were going to explode, but thank God they didn't. But that's what I thought was going to happen. I was like, oh, no, please don't. Like, I was just so freaking out because disgusting things just like nauseate me so quickly and easily. So I was like, no. So I was looking away like, please don't. Because I forgot what happened in this part.
Girl, I was eating lunch. When this scene came on, and I was like, you know what? I'm not fucking hungry at all anymore. Like, I don't ever need to eat again, ever. Like, this is so
I'm
gross.
good.
And then she scans it with the tricorder and she goes, it's a venom sac. How long have you had this? Again, no answer. And then she goes right in front of him and she goes, Worf, open your mouth. Girl, she fucked around and finally found out. He shoots her.
So I guess he understood that.
He understood that enough. He shoots her with that Jurassic Park spitting dinosaur venom that dissolves her fucking face.
It dissolves this really well as well. She literally like throws herself backwards and like, oh, it's so good.
And she's screaming. She's holding her face. She's like riling on the floor. Everyone's running over like, oh my God. And he like tosses the little security guy who was on him like a rag doll, which we all saw that coming.
No shit.
And then he just runs out of sickbay and now he's terrorizing the ship.
He
and
you're like, is. He's just loose somewhere. So
could somebody call security? No? Anybody? What are we going to do about this? There's kids on this ship.
Yes. Thank God Alyssa was there because everybody's freaking out except Alyssa, who was like, get me a hypo spray right now. Where I was like, thank you. This is what good doctors and nurses do. It's like they don't panic in the moment and they get help, right? So Lieutenant Ogawa brings Riker up to speed. Worf's venom nearly paralyzed Beverly completely. And she's now going to need reconstructive surgery, but in quote, she'll be all right. Really?
And we do see her at the end of the episode, and the surgery was flawless. So yay, 24th century.
So her face has been melted off and reconstructed in the course of this episode. I was like, what the?
Just the fact that her face was melted off is pretty awful. So Reg is also there.
Did you notice he's like hovering like an Energizer bunny?
Yes, he's hovering over Alyssa while she's talking, and then when it's his turn, he goes and stands 1 inch in front of Riker's face. And starts talking to him. This is very 90s also. Close talkers was all the rage in the 90s TV shows. I don't know why, because it's never cool. But anyways, he gets all in Riker's face and he's explaining whatever. And Riker's just like, yeah, okay, yeah. And so Reg is like, yeah, the compound that was on Beverly's face matched the compound that was inside the Jeffries tube. So Riker's like, wait, is Worf just like going around spraying this stuff everywhere?
And when did he have time to do that?
Yeah. And why was he in the Jeffries tube? There's so many questions. Yeah. So Riker's just like, so Reg is like, yep, guess so. And so they're like, okay, what do we do now? And this is all horrifying, but here's the little touches I really like. Alyssa ends up turning into a primate later on. And if you notice during this whole scene, she holds her hands like they're like knuckles.
Yes.
She curls in her fingers. So every time she touches the table or like, yeah, when she stands up, she lifts herself up on her knuckles. So she keeps like she's hunching her shoulders while she's talking. She's moving her arms like really sluggishly. It's a very nice touch. While Reg is like skittering around and he's talking really, really fast and all of this. So while they're kind of like, okay, let's figure out what's going on, Geordi runs in and he's like, Commander Riker, we've got 7 security teams looking for Worf, but they can't find him because his life signs keep changing. And so the ship can't detect him. Like, y'all did not do your due diligence, because
don't you have a comm badge?
Later on we find a gal with her comm badge in like 1 second. So whatever. So they can't find him, which is terrible because we already know he's dangerous. He is a weapon. He's at large. He's spitting acid all over the ship and in people's faces. He's biting people.
By the way, Geordi says they've called for a level 2 security alert, and he asks Riker, like, do you think we should up it to level 1?
To level 1?
How did you decide that this was like
to level 2 at any point?
To level 2 any of this shit. What's the highest number? 5, 10, or is 1 the highest? Like, I
think 1's the highest.
Take it to the max. Just max it out.
We started with a level 1 force field. Why?
No.
Do the highest one possible.
No. Yeah. And Riker is like the dumbifying of Riker. So he's like, what do you think? And Geordi's like, yeah. And he's like, okay, let's do that. It's kind of Flowers for Algernon, but like in reverse. And like Alyssa makes those 8 movements when she walks out of the observation lounge, which I love. And did you know, there's this like scene that always makes me feel so bad for Riker, because you're like, no, buddy, you're losing it. Like Riker tries to make a subspace message to Starfleet Command to like alert them to what's going on in the ship. But Riker's like, computer, subspace command. authorization.
Because they ask him for his like security code, and he's like, I don't know what that is.
Yeah, I was like, oh no.
This is the first time when those passwords actually are effective. This is the only time right now.
This
when
is like
he can't
me trying
remember
to
it.
send an email at work, and I'm just like, I was going to write about something important. Now we'll close that draft. Again.
It'll come back to me.
There's flying monkeys everywhere behind you, and you're like, it'll come to me at some point what I was going to write about. Yeah. More soy milk explosion.
I was just going to say, the soy milk's exploded.
I mean, I don't know. Shereese and I are on your team. We're like, I don't know. That sounds really sketchy and it smelled terrible. It could have been some sort of biohazard.
My boss laughed at me very hard. So
your boss laughed because it was soy milk, but had it been something else, nobody would have been laughing.
Yeah.
So
had it been radioactive pus, it would have been like, thank you, Pip, you saved the day. So
without Pip, I don't know where you would have been.
Yeah.
So it could have totally been that.
Yeah.
In our next scene, we're in the shuttle, and Data and Picard are on their way back. So it took them 3 days to find this torpedo. So that thing must have gone far AF.
Yeah.
They found it. They recovered it.
A long time to find it.
Yeah, and like, why'd they bring it back? Why didn't they just, well, whatever, I guess you can reuse them.
It up.
But I just feel like in the 3 days, it could have hit a whole bunch of innocent stuff. But it didn't. So they recovered it. They brought it back. And
just
they're
causing
headed back to
widespread destruction.
Well, yeah, because it's like, if it took you 3 days to find it, like, once you were in range, you could deactivate it remotely.
Also,
the whole thing was that the ship was too far away.
I'm just going to say this too. During that weapons test, when that torpedo like went shooting off like all crazy, torpedoes typically move extremely fast. You're telling me
in a straight line?
A little.
They don't go in circles?
No, they will. Like if
like
something's wrong with like the guidance system, they'll go haywire and then usually blow up. But did you see how fucking fast that torpedo was going? And a shuttlecraft is like quarter impulse power, like just chasing after. I was like, how are you ever going to catch it? How are you ever going to catch that torpedo?
I think maybe Picard just really wanted to get off the ship. He was just like, God, I'm like, done with this shit.
Yeah, sir, there's no chance that we're going to catch it. It's okay. We're going to try anyway. Let's go. Data, you're with me.
They just replicated a new torpedo to bring back. They didn't even catch that one. It's still going. It's still going to this day. Like that artifact from Masks. It's still just going. 80 million years from now, that torpedo is still going to be going. So Data and Picard are on their way back, but the ship is not in the rendezvous point. So they're like, that's a little weird. So they do like, Data does a little tippy tappy and he's like, oh, I found it. And they show it on the view screen and it's crooked, which is funny because it's space.
Yeah.
So there's like no up or down or side to side in space.
But how else are you going to know it's adrift? How else are you going to know?
There's no other way.
Yeah.
So we see it kind of slowly kind of turning. And Data's like,
by the way, every time I see a ship adrift, I'm like, oh shit, things are so bad. Like that's my initial.
Yeah, well, Data's like, okay, the ship is adrift and there's life signs, but they're kind of distorted. So because Picard's like, are there life signs? He's like, they're kind of distorted. Like, I'm not really sure what's going on. So Picard's like, okay, just dock us and we're going to check it out. Now, I thought the same thing where I was like, imagine coming back to your ship, which was fine when you left it 3 days ago. Mm-hmm. And now the ship is adrift and you don't even know if there's life signs. You don't know if everybody you've ever worked with is dead in the ship. I was like, oh man, I'm staying right here. Let's call Starfleet. Let's get some backup.
Let's get contained. Yeah, we're contained now from whatever.
Did something attack the ship? Like, I just thought this premise alone, without any more context, is terrifying to come back to a ghost ship that you just left 3 days ago. Like, what could have possibly happened in 3 days?
And you're so right. And remember the that really awesome episode where like time is standing still on the ship, and you have to do that like temporal force field. Why didn't they do something like that where it's like a mobile containment field around them? So it's like no matter what's going on, because we don't know what's on there. It could be soy milk. It could be Ebola. We don't know, right?
Yeah, but they don't even know that there's an infection. There could be people on the ship who are like. There could be invaders.
I know that.
Like,
but what I'm saying though is like, just on the off chance, like it doesn't really cost you anything to like have that armband on, like pop that on just in case, because you never know. And if you don't need it, you can deactivate it. But yeah, the ship is like spinning around all cockamamie. It could literally be anything.
It could be anything. So they dock, they get out in the shuttle bay, and they both are holding flashlights. And I was like, yeah, those are nice, but also where are the phasers? Because again, my mind is like, if I was in this situation, I would think enemy. I would not think virus. I would not think airborne contagion. I would not think, they all drank something in the water. I would think an alien ship. There was some kind of attack. Maybe they were all carried off the ship to somewhere. I don't know, but I would have phaser out. So I was like, why are we not armed?
Yeah, but we've got Data with his big strong open door hands.
He can open doors with his hands, but he cannot block all of the phasers that could be heading their way, or disruptors, or who knows what. But whatever, I guess a flashlight was all they needed. So they're looking around and everything's covered with slime. Again, like everything in the shuttle bay is like covered with slime. And I was like, the slime, dude. And similar to you, Andrea, I didn't think about those force fields, but I did think, why are they not wearing EVA suits? Because how do they know that the ship is not exposed to space? Like, it's all dark. Maybe there's holes in it or something, but they're just like, we're going to be fine.
It's fine.
So they're walking around. Yeah. And they're like, oh, main power's off. That's weird. And then Data's like, we have to go to the bridge to turn it back on because I can't access it from here. And I was like, false. We've already discovered that you can run the entire ship from literally any panel on the ship, including the one in daycare.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't need to go to the bridge.
Sure can.
But okay, let's go to the bridge.
Yeah.
In this really dangerous situation, and let's keep our flashlights.
Yeah,
that's what we're gonna do.
They've got their little hand beacons, which I always think they look really cool. But I'm like, this is not what you. Maybe just
they're very cool.
Pop a headlight on or something, because you need your hands ready in case like something attacks you or whatever. Everything is super dark and spooky aboard. Doors are ripped open, clothing is left discarded, dripping in goo for some reason. Main power is offline, emergency power only. What the hell happened in here? And it sounds like a crazy jungle. Data's able to discern over 300 animal vocalizations. And one of my thoughts was like, it sounds like coyotes at night. And I don't know if you guys have ever heard coyotes at night, like in the wilderness. I do love to camp. I love camping. Coyotes at night, if you don't know that they're there, they will freak you the hell out. It sounds like people losing their minds and screaming and laughing. It sounds horrible.
We have the British version here, which is urban foxes.
Oh, foxes! And, they like chitter and they
they scream.
Yeah,
they also scream. They normally do it when they're mating. I was trying to think of a good word, couldn't think of one. But
I can think of several words for that.
I was trying to be polite, but yeah, they literally just screech and scream.
Yes, they're very screamy, right?
You know what? I watched this show, like I love crime dramas. I watched a show called Midsummer Murder, which is like, you've seen that show, right? Okay. Yeah. So every single episode, no matter what goes on, there's this crazy scream. Every episode. It's like standard. Yeah. And it's always an animal screaming, and it's always at night. And I'm always like, what is that? I wonder if that's supposed to be the fox. Because I'm like, I thought it was a bird. And I was like, what bird is screaming at night? Like every episode, something's just like, and you're like, what is that? Yeah, why are we okay with that sound?
Well, This is what this sounded like. My first thought was like coyotes in the forest at night, where they really do sound like they're having some sort of mass murder event or something, where it's just like yipping and screeching and screaming and howling, and like it sounds kind of like people enough to be like, oh Jesus Christ.
Oh
like,
my gosh, that's terrifying.
Huskies will do that too, like sled dogs that are usually like Siberian Huskies. They have this very screechy, screamy sound that if you don't know what it is, or if you're not prepared to hear it, you're like, okay, we're getting out of here. Like, phaser set to kill, get out of here. Like, it's really scary. So that's what the Enterprise sounds like, though.
The vibe, yeah. It's super creepy. And again, this is where I wrote again in my notes, all right, back to the shuttle. Like,
yep.
So many times in my notes were like, okay, I'm pulling the plug on this one right here.
100%. And Picard does one of the most disgusting things next to touching all the welts is he picks up an animal skin that has been shed during molting, and he's like feeling it like it's some kind of fabric at a fabric store, like between his thumb and his fingers. And he's like, it's humanoid. Put that down. When are we going to stop touching shit with our bare hands? Come on. This is disgusting.
Yeah, I put in my notes, he touches it without gloves. Yuck. Another time. Yeah, it's gross.
So gross.
They end up in front of Troy's quarters, and the whole place is like a swamp inside. The ceiling is dripping. It's very humid. It's kind of steamy. And Picard's like, what is going on with like the environmental settings in this room? So they're kind of poking around, and they go to the tub and they see something in it. And when they go to touch it, Troy jumps out, but she is completely transformed. Her skin is green. She's got gills. She is now an amphibian.
Look cool.
Oh, the whole thing looked cool. Her eyes are green.
Was brilliant. Like
she had like the finger pads.
The fingers, like
so good, like a frog,
like a gecko.
Frog, yeah.
Yeah,
totally.
it looked so good. It looked so good. And you were like, whoa, like you could tell immediately, okay, this is what they're going for amphibian. Like you don't even need Data's analysis. You can see it done. So, and again, this was very well done because they didn't put scales all over her entire body. They put some gills on her neck. They put some kind of green scales, like, on her temples. Like they did it so it showed her in transition, which was more effective than if they would have put on those stupid Party City masks and made her look like a lizard, right? Where we would have been like,
Antikins and the Cele again.
Yeah, we would have been like, okay, come on. But this nice little subtle touch was so much more impactful because you're like, whoa, she's turning into something else.
I like the way she was acting as well, where she was doing little like gulps.
Yeah. And she couldn't breathe or whatever. And then the way she was looking too, her eyes were just like a lizard.
She had really cool contacts. She had like really cool contacts, and it was really cool. One thing I did notice beyond all that was there were handfuls of her hair next to the bath. I was like, what the hell? Like she still had a head full of hair, so it's not like she was shedding it all. But I was like, why is there all this hair? Like handfuls of it on the side of your tub. So they're all kind of like stuck to the tub. I was like, ew, this is so gross. Yeah.
I've got a real sensory thing about long hair. Particularly in water and again caught around your hands, which is why I have really short hair. And that made me feel sick.
It did, I have long curly hair. It's very long and curly. And I do get that. Like if I get out of the shower and I have like even one strand around my fingers, I'm like, get it all. Like it's my hair. I know what it is. It's not like spider silk, but I'm still like, yuck. So yeah, they're like, okay. So I think the whole crew is de-evolving. We got to get to the bridge and try to get control, right? So Picard and Data get to the bridge and find the Khan dead. His chest had been totally ripped open. Something that did really scare me, and I don't know why, but the command chairs were all like tilted and kind of they looked like they'd been ripped by great force, kind of like out of alignment
and thrown to the side.
Yeah, and I was like, what the hell could it possibly? What could possibly be this strong to do? Yeah.
And even in a battle with the Borg, those chairs are solid.
Yes.
Like everything could explode. Those chairs are still right there.
Yeah. For them to be all tilted and kind of likely, I guess also to me though, like my brother was in a really, really bad car accident when he was a teenager, and he hit a wall going like 85 miles an hour. Like,
Jesus.
It wasn't drunk driving or anything. Like he was distracted and it was late at night and he didn't see, and he ended up like spinning and hitting a wall, and he hit the wall like several times and kept going. He was fine. Amazingly. He was completely fine. Like just very minor bruising. The car was totaled. The rear axle was ripped off the car and like on over the center divider, like on the other side of the road. It was a really bad accident. Miraculously, he was totally fine. But when my mom and I like went to the tow yard to like take pictures of the car for like insurance stuff, the seat was all ripped sideways like that. And the thought that my baby brother was in that when that happened to me still sticks with me so much. So when I see these seats like in the scene, it just takes me back to that. And I'm like, oh my God, like there's just such a visceral fear about that, I think.
That's horrible.
You know what I mean? Yeah. But like, thank God he was okay. Like he just walked out of the accident. Like he just walked away. It was insane and very, very lucky. So yeah, but yeah, oof, those seats always get me.
So what I love about this set, though, you're right. The chairs being askew is creepy, and you've got some extra associations with that that make it even more horrific. But I will say, this set is amazing. Like, how much fun was it, or maybe disturbing was it, to wreck this set? The set that's been up and pretty perfect for 7 years, to have like those screens in the back are flashing, they're flickering. Some of them look smashed. You know, all the chairs are sideways. Like, did they make a new set, or did they just destroy the set that they always use and just dim the lights so we kind of couldn't tell? I don't know, but it worked for me. Like I could tell something terrible has happened, and poor Ensign or whatever his rank was. Like he didn't do anything to anybody. He was only in this episode just to be killed. Like I know, and typical red shirt behavior.
And the way they did it too is like his chest looked like it had been slashed open by claws. I was like, dang.
But Data said his spine had been broken. So you're like, okay. His chest is slashed, but also his spine is broken, but he never even left his chair. Like he never left his post when he was murdered. And whatever killed him didn't eat him. So that's even more terrifying. It killed him for funsies.
Do you think it was, it was Worf, or do you think it was Riker?
I think it was Worf.
Oh, yeah, Riker didn't have claws.
Yeah, Riker didn't have claws, but he did have the crazy strength. So yeah, at this point they start hearing like a grunting and a banging in the ready room. So they go over there, and my beloved Riker is a full-blown caveman.
And he's trying to eat Livingston, which is really upsetting.
He's trying to
Is that the name of that fish?
Yeah.
Which, by the way, that's either a lionfish or a scorpionfish. I can never remember the difference, but they look extremely similar. And both of them are unbelievably toxic and venomous. Like, unbelievably so. They're not eating fish. It's not like trout, you know? It's not salmon. It's not a branzino. Like, it's a super fucking poisonous fish.
I don't know whether either of you noticed this or whether I couldn't tell whether it was just something else in the tank or not, but I think that Livingston had turned into a jellyfish.
Oh,
honestly,
I did not notice.
You could only just see it like over Riker's shoulder,
Yes.
but it definitely looked like a big pulsating jellyfish.
Yes. Okay. Wouldn't be that such a cool little bit of like extra Easter egg storytelling where even the fish has devolved?
That's a lot of detail, but that's what it looked like to me.
Really cool. I did not see that, but I am going to go back and rewatch it. So Riker is an Australopithecine. He jumps onto Picard, but Data is quick with that phaser, but it does take multiple blasts to take him down because he's got all this like, you know, armor plating. And I love the costuming, how like the shoulders are all ripped, you know, and like if you look at Worf too, like in better lighting, like his uniform was all ripped and stuff too, where like all of his spikes and plates were coming out. Jesus Christ, prehistoric Klingons are so terrifying, but
pretty cool. They're pretty, like, that's a pretty, like, it's not a squishy ancestor. It's like a spiky one, which makes sense with their kind of tough warrior thing. You're like, okay, you should come from something kind of tough. You shouldn't come from something like, you know, that creepy lizard that
like a bunny.
We saw in Voyager. Yeah. Or a bunny or something like that. It should be something kind of like hardcore.
Yeah.
This monster makeup was so great. If you Google Australopithecine, it's basically a primate, but it's a primate that was like part of the lineage of becoming a little more humanish, but it definitely just looks like a primate if you Google it. But if you Google it and look at Riker's face compared to it,
the brow ridges,
the makeup, so great. Yeah, the brow ridges and the where the placement of the fur is, so like good. Again, it's in transition and it looks so freaking good. Like, and you buy it, and he's already big. So when they just made his shoulders bigger and he kind of hunched over and stuff, you're like, danger, 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 danger. Like,
this checks out. This checks out. Yeah.
When they first walked in and Picard was like, Riker, and kind of walks towards him, Data is like, sir, and holds him back. Like, don't get too close. But that Picard, was totally useless. What were you thinking? But that was totally useless because Riker just jumps over the table. And this again goes to our point about crazy people and not knowing what they're going to do. Granted, he's not a crazy person. He's a primate. But like, you don't know what they're going to do because Data's going to walk around the table to attack Picard. So he's standing between them. But Riker just jumps over the table. We don't even need the table.
Which was a really
cool... So there was no protection necessary.
It was a really cool aerial shot. So good job, Gates McFadden. Great aerial shot to show just how small that footprint of the room really is and what a small distance it is to close the gap. And because it's shot from above and behind, this is where the stunt double, I assume, did this crazy, like just like straight 2 feet flat on the ground to just absolutely launching themselves over that table. I was like, oh my God. So Will is now unconscious, and it looks like Commander Riker's DNA structure has been altered by that synthetic T cell that's invaded his genetic codes. And the T cells have begun to activate his latent neurons. Shereese, take it away.
Yeah, I have so many notes here where I was like, what the F? So at this point, they're in sick bay. And I was like, somehow, and for some reason, they brought Riker to sick bay. And like, the whole ship is a freaking...
I guess Data.
Thank you. Like, the whole ship is a danger zone, but they've dragged Riker to sick bay. They also have Troy sitting in sick bay. Everyone's just being collected in sick bay as they come across them. Which I'm like, every time you go out, there's danger, but I'm just picturing
back to those little Death Star roller skate robots that are just out like zooming around and like picking up people and dragging them to sick bay, just collecting them.
The little like trash collector robots, or we don't know what the heck they do. Yeah. Yes. I was like, what are these things for? Are they like for recycling? Are they for like dusting? Yeah. We don't. What's the function of these robots? So, anyways. At this point, I was like, I'm not totally sure if they got scientific help from this or if they just Googled some stuff and put it together, because they're saying a lot of real words, but they're stringing them together in a way that doesn't make sense. So T cells are an important part of the immune system. They do not activate any genes or interact with DNA in any way. And they also cannot be transmitted like a virus. T cells are cells. They're little cells that float around your bloodstream. If they find any kind of germs, they activate other parts of your immune system to take care of those germs. So that's what they do. Dormant genes are a thing. Introns are a thing. So those words were correct. But if you reactivated one of your dormant genes, you wouldn't turn into an amphibian. Like that wouldn't happen. Like at no point, if you reactivated 1,000 genes, you would not turn into an amphibian. Once your body's developed, it's developed. It might get bigger, longer, shorter, smaller, but it's not going to turn into a tail or give you 3 eyes.
This is
kind of like,
go ahead.
It's kind of like that Marvel mentality.
Yeah, I was
right?
just
that
going
we
to say,
tell
this
that
is
we tell our
Marvel.
middle
You get
schoolers.
bit by a spider and suddenly you turn into Spider-Man. What happens if you get bit by a spider is you have a spider bite. That's what happened.
Which is actually awful. So
yeah.
try not to get bit by a spider.
Meanwhile, me with no science background at all, I was like, turned into a frog. Seems legit.
Well, the other thing I had a big issue with was how everybody's de-evolving and you've got all these humans that are de-evolving into shit like spiders and lizards. I'm like, that's not how that works.
Yeah.
We don't just all turn into spider. That is so many branches away on the evolutionary tree.
Yeah.
We would turn into like a primate and then something, but I guess it would not be as exciting if everybody turns into a primate.
It would not at all be as exciting because then we just have Planet of the Apes on the ship.
Yeah.
So the idea of them turning into other things is so interesting and cool, and I love that they did it. The explanation is just completely wrong. So I wish they would have, instead of saying anything about introns, or I guess they could have still gone that way, but instead of having the T cells become a virus, which a T cell's not a virus, come on, dude, it's in the name. But instead of doing that, if they would have just used that like Urelian virus, and this is what the Urelian virus does, I'd be like, okay, like I would buy that because I'd be like, oh, alien virus does alien things. Like I would totally be more on board with that, even though that also wouldn't happen. So just so you know, if you get some genes reactivated, you're not turning into a lizard or a spider or anything like that.
Aww.
If anything, you'll get a new protein made in your body or a new enzyme, or you will lose activity of a protein or an enzyme. And that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Like, that
Kit,
is all
meanwhile, is like, I'm going to turn into a flying squirrel and I'm going to go jump from one tree to another and I'm going to fly.
Oh, that would be awesome.
Wouldn't that be cool?
It'd be really fun. So that's what they discover. So Picard's like, all right, Data, can you cure this? And he's like, pretty sure. Just give me a little bit of time. I'm sure I can just
create a retrovirus. Yeah.
Yeah. And a retrovirus, again, is a real thing. And a retrovirus is a virus that does incorporate itself into the cell's DNA.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, now that nails it. Like that actually fits the thing. But then the rest of the stuff. So that's why I'm like, who are they consulting with? Because half of it is sensible and half of it is total nonsense. So I don't know what was going on. Y'all should have hired me.
They had someone who took 1 or 2 cell molecular classes
in high school.
Yeah, and they were like, okay, intron, exon, T cell, retrovirus. Good, go with that.
I think that's pretty much all we need. You're like, okay. As Data is telling Picard, the whole theory and this is what happened and this is how it works and, maybe I can find some kind of cure. He kind of casually mentions, by the way, sir, you're also infected.
Thank you.
Just so you know. And Picard's like taking this news so hard, understandably so, because he's seen what it's done to people.
Yeah.
And he's like, how much time do I have, Data? And Data's like, well, about 12 hours. Like, he's just so unconcerned.
You may turn into a lemur or a pygmy marmoset. And I was like, nope. That's not a lemur.
This is my favorite. Like, there are a lot of memes and stuff about this, but there's a perception of Star Trek as being like it's less like Star Wars with lots of fighting and like war and stuff. It's more like it's quite political. It can be quite serious. We have courtroom drama in it, that kind of thing. But whenever people sort of say like, oh yeah, but it's a very serious show, and then you get like a scene like that where it's like you're going to turn into a
lemur
or lemur. It's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
So well delivered too. And he's just like, okay, I understand. And you're like, wait, I'm gonna be a lemur? Well, lemurs are pretty cute. I guess cool. I would take like lemur over a freaking Australopithecine because he was not cute at all.
No. You know what? I do love that Picard's like, okay, well, we better find the answer before I start swinging through the ship looking for breakfast. That's such a great line. Such a great line. I could totally see Picard as like an adorable little like ring-tailed lemur like swinging around. Also, pygmy marmoset, one of the coolest animal names ever. I was like, it's got all the sounds and it's got multiple Y's in it. Like, this is great. So Data suggests using the computer in his quarters because it has its own sub-processing unit and should be intact. So in Data's quarters, this is important. They're like, oh, we hear like the little mewing of cats. And they're hungry. So it's like, oh, Spot must have had her kittens. And the kittens are adorable. I mean, I'm not a super cat person, but is there anything cuter than a kitten?
Really cute.
Oh my gosh. And they don't really know how to work their murder mittens yet. Like, they're so cute. Spot, though, has de-evolved into a lizard. Again, that's not how that works at all.
And the lizard, and we know it's Spot because the lizard has a cute little collar. I thought that was a nice touch. I really like that. And, Data's like, why isn't Spot caring for her kittens? And it's like, oh, okay, something, this is like a key, is that while Spot de-evolved at the moment of giving birth, which is such a terrible moment to transition into another species.
Yep.
So I guess she did it just in time. Because lizards definitely lay eggs. They don't have kittens. Mm-hmm. That would just be,
they
all
are
kinds of weird.
oviparous. They are not viviparous, which is the live birth. They lay eggs.
Oh, yeah. Can you imagine a lizard birthing kitten? That's just wrong.
Good God. That's the kind of shit that nightmares are made.
Does a lizard have a cloaca?
A cloaca. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. The cloaca is like their opening for like urine and birth, and like sharks have cloacas too. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Now I won't be able to sleep tonight for these images, but thank you.
Hey, you asked the question, Pip.
I was curious. I'm sorry.
You weren't going to be able to sleep anyway. So after this conversation, so this is nothing new. So that's when they're like, okay, well, there must be some trick here. And anyways, they kind of science it out and they're like, well, when a mother's pregnant, they have special antibodies that can protect the baby from any kind of infection, specifically viral. This is true. It's not specifically viral. It's literally anything. Like all the stuff Data said, yes, all that stuff filters out the blood to protect the growing baby. Mm-hmm. So they're like, okay, well, maybe Spot has some like, special antibodies that we could use to synthesize some kind of a treatment or a cure. And Data's like, yeah, it'd be better from a human though than from a cat/lizard, I think, if we're going to be applying it to all the humans on board. But since this virus works against animals, it shouldn't matter.
It really shouldn't. By the way,
again, viruses don't work like that either.
Yeah.
They are very, very, very specific to species.
Yeah, so where it's like every animal on the entire ship has been affected. You're like, that's not. Yeah. Again, I feel like the tagline for this episode is, that's not how that works.
I kind of feel like I'd love to watch this, but where it keeps pausing and Shereese just pops up and goes,
like,
yeah,
I think you'll find.
So Andrea, you'll do the like security retraining parts of the video. Here's what went wrong here. And I'll do like the science retraining parts of the video. Here's what went wrong here.
Yeah.
So so they're like, okay, well, we happen to find out at the beginning of the episode that Alyssa's pregnant. So let's go find her. And then we can just take her amniotic fluid and like isolate something that's going to neutralize something and fix everything. So
by the way, I love how Data just spills the tea on Lieutenant Ogawa's like pregnancy. He's like, well,
pregnancy.
She just recently became pregnant. Let's go take her amniotic fluid without asking her. I mean, she would say yes if she was well because save the ship. But also it's like, let's just steal her fucking amniotic fluid.
Hey, if I'm going to turn into a lemur in 12 hours, let's do it.
Yeah, I mean, I get.
Let's do it and save the ship.
I was going to say she can't look after her baby if she's a chimp anyway, can she?
That's true. That's
not
that
in the way.
She can as a chimp. Actually, they're really good with babies. Believe it or not.
Even as I was saying that, I was like, this isn't hold
I mean, not human babies, they eat those, but like chimpanzee babies, yeah, like monkey babies, they're really like
human babies.
Oh yeah, mm-hmm. They sure do.
I mean, if they're caught slipping, oh my God.
Yep, they sure do. Chimpanzees are vicious, but they are also very communal. All primates are very communal.
So they kill babies, but they do it together.
Yeah. But it's a team building exercise.
Yeah.
They share the proceeds. They actually do that when they go on hunting parties. They usually eat berries and stuff. But when they go on hunting parties and they kill meat, they do share as a community, and they all raise the babies as a community. Like it's not just like this mom raises this baby, like they all raise the babies. Alyssa would be great as a primate mama, but we have a chance to save the whole ship with her amniotic fluid ? So they find her in 2 seconds. Her comm badge is right there. So let's find her.
So and then you couldn't find Worf, but you could find Alyssa.
We could not.
Okay.
Yes, we're back in sick bay with Alyssa now. We have everyone in sick bay.
Because a little roller skate robot from Star Wars has collected her and brought her in, apparently. Yeah.
So this makeup on her, which I'm pretty sure is just CGI'd instead of makeup, looks so good to me. To me, it's giving Planet of the Apes. Like this looks exactly like Planet of the Apes, which maybe they just pulled from that movie for this scene. But it doesn't look like they make-upped her. I don't know. What do you think?
See, it looked like practical effects to me. And Dan Curry was like the special effects wizard. And I know that for this episode, they also brought like a lot more special effects artists like onto this episode just because of, everybody's transformation. It looked practical effected to me. Although if I looked at it again, I might be like, yeah, you're right. It kind of looks CGI-ish. Like, I'm not sure. It was
I don't know. It actually looks
done
good to me.
so well. It looks like Alyssa, but it looks like Alyssa, but chimp.
Mhm.
Yeah, she looks amazing. And they're like, let's just take her amniotic fluid. And as this is all happening, the ship is rocked because on top of all the other shit that's going wrong, a plasma vent has ruptured. So now there's no one
near
in
the warp core, because why not?
Because why not? So now we have to put like a time frame on it. So no one in main engineering is there to fix it.
Take this ship back to Utopia Planitia. It's been 3 days. Why is the warp core already about to breach?
I think because Worf has been running around in there spitting on everything, and it's causing like that's what's. I imagine that's what's going on.
You know what? That is fair. That's actually fair. Because I'm like, this ship should be fine without supervision. Like, it should be
absolutely
running by
fine.
Itself at this point.
It really should.
But you're right. Worf's going around spitting on everything, and that's ruining the vibes.
Which I'm gonna say, as an, I want to say as
like, why would he do that?
Yes, because. Creating venom is very biologically expensive for an animal.
Yes.
It takes a lot of time and energy and protein and all that shit to create that venom. So you better not waste it spitting at just a bulkhead that didn't do anything to you. Like, that's a waste.
That you can't eat.
Yeah, like snakes don't just go
it's
around.
It's not trying to attack you, and you can't eat it.
Go around biting trees because they don't want to waste their venom. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not.
Neither do spiders.
Doesn't make any sense to me. Again, that's not how that goes. But okay.
But you know what? This to me reminds me of like Aliens. Like whichever one that I watched with you, I think was like Alien 3 or whatever. But the aliens that are like running around killing people are just killing people just like for no reason. And that was my biggest complaint. Remember we watched that movie? I was like, if this was a true animal, even if it's an alien type animal, animals kill to eat or to protect territory or to fight over a mate. They don't kill for funsies.
That's
like, they don't just
thing.
kill and leave the carcass and then kill the next one and then kill the next one and they maybe eat the 4th one, but then they kill another one and they kill another one, then they eat the 6th one. Right. It's like they don't just leave bodies behind.
Cats will kill for fun.
Really?
Yeah, they will kill mice and stuff and just play with them.
That's because they're playing with it and then it dies.
Wait, do they kill it and then play with the dead mouse, or do they just kill it by playing with it?
No, they will kill one and then just play with it. Well, both. I've seen cats.
Oh, really?
Like, I've got indoor cats, so it's not a thing. Yeah. But yeah, back at my parents, like I've definitely seen them just kill something and then just literally treat it like a toy.
Ooh.
Yeah. Or they bring them to you as a gift.
Shereese and I have the most grossed out.
Yeah,
we're like,
that's horrible. Okay, all right, I'll give you that. Cats do that. Okay, I'll give you that. But big cats don't. Lions don't. Panthers don't. Tigers don't. Like, if they're going to go through the trouble of killing something, they're not just going to like play with it and leave it on the floor. They're going to eat it.
Tell me you've seen that video of the I think it's
I have not.
You're like, no, I have
Whatever is coming after this.
Tell me what it is, Pip.
Okay, there's a video of, I think it's a killer whale, like an orca. And they've killed a seal, I think, and they are playing with it. They are letting it float, and then they swim underneath it, and they hit it with their tail, and just
make it go whipping away.
Orcas do play with their food. Orcas are very playful. They play with everything. They even play with the food they're trying to kill.
Is in air quotes.
Yeah, I mean, it's their serial killer version of playful,
and they'll just whip. Yeah, I do remember seeing a video where like they were chasing a seal and went under it and absolutely walloped it into the air, and that thing went flying 80 feet into the air, which obviously stuns it, breaks its back, and does all this stuff. So it's like now not able to get away. Killer whales are absolute assholes. Like, they're such good hunters, and they're like, you know what we can do? We can make this better. Must be.
Oh my gosh!
That Free Willy was like big orca, like really got in there in the early 90s and convinced us all that they were really lovely. And actually,
because Free Willy was like, "You're going to just be my best friend." No, you won't. You're going to
do not get in the tank with him.
Do not do that. By the way, fun in air quotes fact. So gray whales will whales migrate from breeding to feeding. So they go feeding up in the cold waters where it's oxygen rich and there's lots and lots of like food, and then they swim down to warm waters to have their pups. So gray whales will go from Alaska down the coast of California down into Mexico and have their pups in the warm water, and then they will bring them back up to the north. Right. But because it's a baby whale, they don't swim very well and all that yet. Like, the mothers will take a long time to like migrate up north because they stay really close to the shore, so they're kind of hugging the shore the whole way. So orcas will separate them and like drown the baby whale and kill it to eat it, but the only part of a whale they ever eat is the tongue. The rest of the meat is wasted. I mean, wasted is like, it's all part of the food chain, right? So it'll go to the bottom and scavengers
everything at the bottom of the ocean will eat it.
And like these mothers have to, and like they're recorded doing these like really heartbreaking little songs because they'll like sing and still call out for their young who's been like separated and murdered, like, and they just rip the tongue out and eat the tongue, and that's it. That's the only part, which blows my mind.
Dark. I'm
like, you guys are such assholes. You guys are dicks.
I'm just imagining Andrea standing by the water, just going, "You assholes!"
Such. It's like, you're not like, let me eat this thing and bite it. Like, sharks are simple. They like kill something real quick and they eat it and it's done. But like orcas will be like, yeah, how do we string this moment out longer? They're such dicks. Anyway,
no one's sleeping tonight. All right, I stand corrected. Some animals do play with their food.
Yeah,
that was like a 10-minute.
I still don't think they leave a layer of bodies behind.
Yeah, no.
Some animals absolutely
most
do
traumatic
play with their
TED
food.
talk ever.
Yeah, in this case, Worf is going around just spitting venom for funsies and ripping up ensigns
and leaving it.
And my thing was like, when they're all back to normal, are we going to have some awkward moments? Like, did we all remember what we did when we were animals?
Thank you.
I feel like a bunch of stuff went down on the ship.
Right, because like, one, you like sexually assaulted a bunch of people, Worf. Two, you killed at least one guy. We're going to say a number of people because look at the size and armor plating on him, okay? And spikes and like sheer anger and drive. Is there not an inquisition that happens after, like an investigation as to like Ensign Calloway's like mom is going to want some questions answered? Like, why did my son get killed at the con?
I did think that this episode finishes very quickly, and obviously they had the time limit, but there are a lot of unresolved questions, and everyone seems remarkably happy and calm. And
all's well that ends well.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, if I turned into a giraffe for 3 days, I'd have some issues. I wouldn't just be like, well, back to 10 forward. Let me get a little snack. Like,
and you're eating a salad of leaves and shit. And you're like,
come on, dude. Yeah. So, anyways,
while the dead body, that dude is still there on the bridge.
Put back together the bridge and all the things, cleaned up the snake skin, like all the things. But anyways, at this point, Data's like, okay, I'm pretty sure I can create some kind of cure, but for some reason it's going to take me a ridiculous amount of time, even though everything else I've done on the show has only taken 2 seconds. So Picard's like, okay, cool. You take all the time you need. We've got all the time in the world. So
our warp core is about to breach, but like, go ahead. Take your time.
We've got all the time in the world. Oh, shoot. I totally skipped that. Okay.
Oh, well, we've been all over the place.
Right. So the warp core thing is happening. So they're like, okay, while this is happening, I know we need to find a cure, but before that, let's make sure we don't explode. So they go to engineering. And Data's like, doop, 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 I'm going to fix this or whatever.
Spider webs everywhere.
And there's spider webs everywhere. And Picard's like, well, I'm going to go check on the warp core and just like make sure everything's cool.
Don't leave him.
That should also be a tagline for the episode. Stay together. So Picard goes walking and there's spider webs absolutely everywhere, which is so bizarre because the ship is usually spotless. So he's kind of walking around and looking, and he turns the corner and he's looking towards the warp core. And that's when Spider Barclay jumps up, smacks against the wall, and then jumps back down like really quickly. And you just see half of his face is covered with eyes, which is the grossest part of spiders, all their mini eyes. Yeah. And then he like scurries away, and Picard jumps back, and he just like his heart's racing, and
he did scream.
Like, what was it?
He did scream. Really, it was like true terror.
Understandably so. Like
Patrick Stewart killed it.
Yeah, and Data runs around with a phaser, but by the time he gets there, Spider Barclay's he's not really gone, but he's like hidden, and Data scans it and is like, oh, that was Barclay, and he's like he's an arachnid.
Time to get the raid out.
He's turning into a spider. Yeah. This is yet another time to be like, okay, escape pod, we're out of here. But I guess now they're so close to a cure. Data, you handle this. I'll be in the escape pod. And
to be honest, though, you can't even go because now you're infected too. So even if you escape somewhere, you're going to spread this. Yeah. So best just to let the ship just blow up. It's fine.
I don't mind that. I just don't want to be eaten by attacked by a giant spider or giant, oh my gosh.
Honestly, from the moment they got off the shuttle, like Data would have been wearing me like a backpack because I would have just been like, nope, absolutely not.
You go in first, okay, buddy? I'll come in right after you.
Yeah, I got your back.
Yeah, totally. A backpack is a great idea. Or one of those little like early 2000s backpacks with the leash on it that like parents who didn't want to lose their kids at the zoo or whatever would wear. Yeah, have one of those.
That's great.
Like, Data, don't go far.
Yep.
No. God, no. He's perfect too, because it's like, I can't be infected by this. So, and I have super strength, so I can even fight like Worf.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I mean, until he gets ripped apart, because he has limits too. But Anyways, so Picard's like, I'm experiencing all these emotions, and he starts describing kind of panic, fear, anxiety, whatever.
Yeah.
And Data's like, this might be the initial stages of you turning into an adorable little lemur. So, you have heightened, awareness. And he's like, you know what? My awareness, my instincts are telling me that we need to hurry the F up.
Yep.
So they're like, okay, let's get out of here. So they go back to sickbay, and that's where we see Alyssa with the cool CGI or practical effects makeup.
Mhm.
And he's like, yep, I can make this antigen, antibody, antidote, whatever he's doing that doesn't make sense, but he strings together a bunch of words, and he's like, I can totally do this. Give me like another few hours. While they're doing that, something big and scary starts banging at the door, and Picard runs to the other side of sickbay. He's like up against the wall with his phaser out, and he's like, it sounds big, it sounds angry, it sounds like it wants to eat us, which it totally does. And I'm like, there's got to be a hatch in here somewhere to eject.
That's what I was like.
Where is the hatch?
Go to Beverly's office and climb on the desk and pop a hatch and climb through like an elevator. There's got to be something.
There's got to be hatches all over. They always use a hatch in sickbay. There's got to be some hatches, but apparently there's a second door. So we didn't even need a hatch. And this time, I guess the doors are locked for once. It didn't just go and open when this monster started banging. So that's good. And Data's like scanning it, and he's like, yeah, it's like this or that. And it's got Klingon DNA. And so Picard's like, oh crap, it's whatever Worf has devolved into, which we don't even want to know.
Nope.
And I'm pretty sure he wants to eat us. But then Data just calmly says, there are many other crew members in different parts of the ship that are much easier to capture and consume than us. Like, oh gosh, I guess that's true.
He was right. I mean, actually, in ecology, we did learn this, how it's like there's like a cost benefit analysis that animals do when they're hunting for prey,
like path of least resistance.
Yeah, it really is the path of least resistance. Like, okay, I can, if I'm a cheetah and I want to take down like a water buffalo, because that's like lots of food, but if it's going to take me 7 days to take it down, it's not worth it. Like, I'll go after some of these like monkeys and eat them, or whatever the fuck, right? They eat, right? So this is where Picard actually starts doing a great job, because he's kind of like telling us the story. He's like, yeah, doing this Sherlock deduction thing where he's like, okay, well, these animals only behave this kind of way if they're feeding, or if they're breeding, or if they're trying to, mark a territory. And then they put together that, like, because they somehow collected Troy out of her pool, she's in there, and they're like, oh, well, he bit Troy on the face, but he did it in a way that's like not near any like major artery or like muscle group or whatever. So it's possible that was like a mating bite, which like lions will bite each other when they mate, but they'll bite like ears and like the back of the neck, but not in a place where you can like really paralyze or damage them. Yeah. And
we know that Klingons do the face biting thing.
Yeah, we saw him and Kalar
we saw that with Kalar. Yeah. So we're like, okay.
Yeah, it's like, it's
like, oh, he sees her as a must be in heat.
Yeah, come on, guys, don't kink shame.
Yeah.
Poor Deanna. Poor Deanna. That is not the person you want to see you as a mate. Not when he's all armor plated and psychotic
and roaring like crazy, like absolutely. Yeah,
they've got this super scary growl.
He's like it's like the boss level of devolution.
Yeah, he really. This is the final boss.
He's the Bowser of the ship at this moment. And we're like, how are we going to escape this? So Picard's like, I know.
We can't even call through a tube or anything. Like Mario actually would.
There are no tubes. Yeah. There are also no fireballs, but there is just Bowser and a big brick wall.
Yeah.
There's nowhere to go. There's no escape. There's no turning around.
Yeah.
So Picard's like, can you just like concentrate her pheromones and make them like way more powerful than her actual pheromones? So that way we can like spread them throughout the ship and convince Worf that she's somewhere else so he can leave. So you have time to create a cure. And so Data's like, of course I can do this. Boop, boop. Here's a hypospray.
Yeah,
just
okay, hold on. Pause. It took you 1 second to do this, but it's going to take you like 36 hours to put this retrovirus together. Stop it. Stop it, Data. You already have it. You already have the retrovirus made. Come on. It's in the bank. He's like, computer, replicate retrovirus number 37 and a hot chocolate.
Seriously. And put it in 12 hyposprays. But it's like, okay, he did that in 1 second. And then he's like, but I'm going to need some time on this retrovirus. So
why,
Picard's
Data?
Like,
for dramatic effect, Picard. That's why.
You stay handle that. I'm going to run around the ship and just spray pheromones everywhere I go.
Literally, I just wrote, this seems like a really bad plan. I was just like,
yeah.
Like
I wrote the same thing.
It would be different if, like, I don't know, they transported it to a completely different bit of the ship, or like, but he's like, no, I'm going to spray it right by me. And then
run away really fast.
What the hell? There was one bit where he was at least trying to sort of vaguely do it at arm's length, like into a doorway.
Slightly away from him. I thought about that with the doorway. I was like, why doesn't he spray it all into that doorway? So it seems like she's in that room.
Yes, have it like kind of like a garden hose. There's a little latch that you can keep it on permanently on, and then just chuck it. Or more realistically, at the end of the episode, Data's like, I have synthesized the retrovirus. I'm going to release it in a gaseous state. So you have the ability to release it in a gaseous state. You couldn't just do that with Troy's pheromones? Just
you absolutely could have done that. Release it in a gaseous state, literally, and you can just program it to. You can program it to kind of release away from them and just lead them away. But again, for dramatic effect, we couldn't release it in a gaseous state. Picard has to personally dispense it with his little freaking inhaler held 3 inches from his face.
Which only had about 3 pumps in it before it was out.
It only had 3 pumps. So he has to be super close to sickbay for Worf to catch the scent. But then also run really fast away so that Worf goes away and gives Data time. So he does this. This is the plan. This is the plan, people. So I wrote in my note multiple times, run, Captain! Just run, Captain!
It's the super stupid, scary chase. And like, Picard, you're right, Pip. He does kind of do this thing where he gets to a junction in the hallway. Shereese is just dying laughing.
Bro, then he just chucks it because now Worf is chasing him. And you're like, buddy, that was, I mean, you only had 3 pumps. Why were you even still holding it?
Who could have seen this coming?
The only thing that would have been worse is if he tried to spray it and it was turned round and he sprayed himself. And he's like, oh no, now I smell of pheromones. He just gets,
then he's trying to wipe himself off with his sleeve. Yeah, it's just, we'll see.
And Worf's already there.
Yeah, you're already being eaten. But like, so Picard does get to a junction and he kind of sprays it like in all directions. And he sprays like a lot down one end of the hallway. And then he kind of backs into a corner. So it's like, okay, cool. Like, just stay in the shadows. Like, if Worf is an apex predator, he will probably be able to smell you, but he's more driven by Troy's pheromones. So he'll follow that. But then he did the stupidest fucking thing ever. He's like, like trying to open a turbo lift door. And the turbo lift, for some odd reason, even though all the other lights are off, the turbo lift light is like, so
yeah, it's like a sunlight bulb inside of the turbo lift. It is the brightest bulb possible in the darkened hallway.
You're trying to like wrench the door open, and then Worf for some reason kind of stops and is like, "What?" and like tries
Worf
to go
hits the corner where all the pheromones are, and he just looks to the right and sees Picard like, and Worf's like, "Okay, well, I'll just eat you since I'm here, or I guess kill you and play with you, whatever I'm feeling like at the moment."
Just stay still, and like let him go on.
Or, and my thought was like, get in a Jeffries tube, because then at least like you're hidden and maybe it'll cover your smell and something. But he went for the turbo lift, and once he gets inside, he gets the doors open enough for him to climb in, but then the doors won't close, and he's like, turbo lift, take me to whatever place. And it's like
trying to talk to the turbo lift at this point.
Yeah, everything's off.
Do you know who's really, really good at closing doors?
Data. Yeah. But
Data would have never even done that.
Data's over there filming a TikTok in sickbay because he's clearly already made this like retrovirus.
He's painted a couple of things. He's playing a little violin solo in between.
He's created a cool sculpture of Worf out of clay of what he thinks he might look like on the other side of the door.
Based on the paw prints on the other side. Yeah.
Picard is freaking out. So he like climbs to the top of the turbo lift, which I thought was pretty smart. But I also thought, I don't know, Worf still has digits. Like he still has hands and feet, and he can crawl and climb. And like, there's no, you know, like when you think of like being out in the woods with, I don't know, certain kind of animals chasing you. Yeah. Like there are some that can't climb trees.
Yeah.
So you're like, oh, well, if I can climb a tree, I'll be safe at least until I have to come down, right? Yep. But it's like, I'll be safe because they can't climb. But then there's other animals where you're like, well, I'm screwed if I do that, because they can climb just as well as I can. How many
times I've seen people try to climb a tree in a video, like to get away from a black bear, and the black bear's like,
yeah, I was gonna say like a bear.
Like, see, right? Yeah. They all can fucking climb trees. Don't do that.
Bears can climb better than you can. Yeah. Exactly. So like some animals, you're like, climbing a tree it's not going to do it for you, and you also can't outrun them. And that's how I was feeling about Worf. So when he popped out of the top of the turbo, when Picard popped out of the top of the turbo lift, my first thought was like, oh, that's so smart. Get away. But then my second thought was like, well, he's going to be right after you. Like he's faster than you. He's bigger than you. He can still climb. He's still got hands. I was like, I don't really see I'm not seeing a way to get out here.
Yeah.
But so he starts to climb, and then he hears growling above him. So I'm like, oh shoot, Worf already got to the other deck somehow. So then he goes, you know what? I'm not going to climb to that deck. I'm just going to hop out of a Jeffries tube right here. Like I'm not even going to keep going because Worf's above me. He goes through the inside of the Jeffries tube, and immediately Worf spits acid on him through the floor above, and I lost it in this scene. I was so freaked out. I totally lost it. His arm was all burned and scalded, and he pulled it back. And then I was like, oh, you're screwed now. You're screwed, because he's just going to melt through the floor and like come through and just eat you.
This could be out of a horror film. It's really good.
Yeah.
It really
I still don't know how he got, like, I don't know what happened from this point. Did he go into the Jeffries tube on the other side? Like, I don't know what happened after this point. But somehow he ends up in a Jeffries tube.
Yeah.
With Worf right behind him.
Right.
And I was like, yeah, you're not going to make it. You're going to be eaten.
It's a bad time. It's a really bad time. And
he's still going to get Troy after he eats you.
Yeah. Like, so like this was for naught. It really was. You're like, you just got eaten for zero reason, because your plan was so stupid to be like, run. Okay, I'm out of hyper spray, right? And Pip, I totally have that image of like he had it turned around, accidentally sprayed himself. So no matter where he's running, he's still the target. Yeah. So at some point, I guess in the entire ship's worth of Jeffries tube, he ends up back at the Jeffries tube where Reg and Geordi were working on that panel, because that panel was like off the bulkhead. And so he puts the panel down, which looks like metal to me. So I was like, this doesn't quite add up.
This made me really angry because that is metal, but also, yeah, I don't know whether it's meant to be, but it's like a rubber matting on the floor, right?
Yeah.
For them to crawl on. So I was like,
this is safer.
It's the wrong way round.
You just zapped yourself.
Oh my gosh. I just realized that the floor looks rubber. I did realize that the panel was metal, and I was like, maybe they're going to try to say it's some non-conductive metal. I don't know. But you're right, the floor looks rubber and the panel looks metal.
It was like there was an episode where he was in a Jeffries tube and like had his jacket.
Yes.
Oh, it was the Barry on Sweep one, right? Where it's like he did that. But I was like, but wait, he doesn't have a jacket on this episode. That was that other episode where the ship was being hijacked. So yeah, no, he just basically made himself a crispy bacon treat for Worf to snack on.
It's Picard Cajun style. But somehow physics works differently.
Girl, the 11 herbs and spices were like fear, anxiety, panic. Like those were the spices.
So he zaps the living daylight out of the Worf creature, and Worf collapses into the Jeffries tube, but he's still alive and he's still breathing. And I'm sure he's going to get up at any moment.
Like in 10 seconds.
So again, I'm like, run, Captain. You zapped him. You just stunned him, but he's fine. Get out of there.
He just sat with his knees up to his chin, like crouched, like, okay, I guess I'll wait here. Because Data's like, Captain, I've managed to synthesize the retrovirus. It only did take me 4 minutes after all. I'm going to release it in a gaseous state through the Enterprise, which we could have done with the pheromones, but whatever. Like, it's going to be a little while.
And I'm going to heal the entire ship in about 2 minutes.
Yeah, everybody's just going to re-evolve. It's like, get out of that Jeffries tube. You're backed against a door. Just go through the door.
And go through the door. That's what I was thinking. Go
Leave
through the
his
door.
ass there.
He's paralyzed by fear because he's a pygmy marmoset. Come on.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, there's that. Good Lord. What an absolute cockamamie mess.
Why do you think lemurs are endangered? It's because when they're faced with danger, they just bring their knees up to their chest and sit there and wait to die.
And they just go, I'm fine, and everything's fine. Everything's fine, and I'm okay. Everything's good. Everything's good.
It's well known in
scientific circles.
In pygmy circles, that's what they do. Yeah. That whole thing was just so poorly thought out. I was like, that's not how that goes. That's not how that goes. You just shocked yourself. Also, did you notice that big electrical conduit that he pulled was kind of like right in the middle of the Jeffries tube? I was like, why would you build that there? How are you going to go around that? It's just this giant
it wasn't
like
it wasn't there. It was in the floor, but Barclay had pulled it through the floor and stuck it into the wall.
Okay.
When the thing in the wall, whatever, because of the thing on the floor, it still makes no sense. But that's why it was in the middle, is because Barclay put it there.
But it wasn't there by design. Okay, because I was like,
it wasn't there by design.
Crawl around that thing. And where was that when Picard was crawling past it? It wasn't there, and then suddenly it was when Worf was behind him. I was like, there's too many holes in this episode. But I will say, I still love this episode. It's so much fun to watch.
I love it too. It's such a cool idea.
In an episode where we've just talked about how ridiculous the science is about how T cells don't work that way. Yeah. It's not a virus, all this thing. But you're like, but there was a cable coming out of the middle of the floor. That's just impractical. Like, how would you get access? Like, that's a health and safety nightmare.
Easily the most ridiculous part of the episode. Easily was the cord in the middle of the Jeffries tube which is a tripping hazard. I think we can all agree.
We need some
on
cones
that.
and some signs, okay, around this whole thing.
Just a design flaw. Take this whole shit back to Utopia Planitia. Yeah. Take it all back. We need that. We need a total refit.
She said wet floor venom on it. Which, as it turns out, is the only thing more dangerous than spoiled soy milk. So, you know, you were very right.
I'm never gonna live this down. And now I put it on a podcast on the internet. What an idiot.
Well, you know what? I will say Shereese and I both are scientists. We've both worked in labs. We've both been all trained with like hazardous materials. Yeah. And we both are like, nope, that's 100% what you should have done.
Yes. We both agree that what you did was the right call.
Maybe
not
in a library.
You could have also looked up a few shelves, sure. But if I saw something gooey and yellow and smeary and I'd be like, what the F? Like, I'd be worried.
This is not supposed to be here now.
Yeah. So next thing you know, we're in sick bay. Data's cure apparently worked well because all is well that ends well. Everyone's fine. Beverly's face is back to normal. Whoop, whoop. And, you know, people are just kind of going about their day. And Beverly's talking to Reg and saying, like, explain to him what happened. And basically she says, well, you know, this is a brand new disease that's never been seen before. Yep. So it's tradition to name it after the first patient, which actually is true. That does happen. So he was like, you know, she was like, okay, so we're going to name it after you. And he's like, great. That's great. And he just like walks out, and then Troy walks up and Beverly says he was turned into a spider and now has a disease named after him. And Troy says, better clear my calendar for the next couple of weeks. But which was a really funny line.
Such
but I
a
also
great
feel
ending.
like your calendar should be clear anyways. Yeah. Because everyone on the ship has been turned into animals. Some have been killed. Who knows what happened to all the rest of them?
Even she shouldn't be working. She needs to be taking time off. You were a fucking
who is her therapist? You know, like, yeah, my boyfriend like tried to rape me and bit me on the face.
Yeah,
and then I turned into an amphibian.
Yeah. When I was a frog, swimming in breathing water through my gills.
Yeah,
girl, let's call Starfleet Medical to just have a whole team of counselors drop by.
We all need some time with a therapist at this point. But everybody on the ship was fine. I thought that was a really, really great ending. It was funny. It kind of was a circle of life because it started with Reg being a hypochondriac and it ended with like, actually, you did have a pretty bad disease that ruined everything.
Barclay's,
you know what I mean? Like
protomorphosis syndrome. Yep.
Yeah. It was a really nice ending. And this is what I prefer 1,000 times more than the moral of the story.
Yeah.
Because this wrapped up the story.
Yes.
And it's just like, oh, and now it's over without us being like, well, I guess we all got to appreciate where we come from and remember our roots or something stupid like that.
100%.
So I'm glad it didn't go that direction.
100%. Okay. So final thoughts. Pip, as our guest, who we have been super excited to talk to, what are your final thoughts on this absolutely ridiculous episode?
What a lot of fun. It's just so much fun to watch. Like you said, the makeup effects and everything are brilliant. I think it really, like, I'm a big horror fan. I think it veers very close to, like, we've talked about the connections to like Alien and stuff like that. I think it veers very close to being like a proper horror film, like a creature feature. And I really enjoyed it.
That's awesome. Yeah. Shereese?
I wrote in my notes, like, I never noticed before how wonky the science was in this episode, which makes sense because I never watched it before as a microbiologist. But that being said, this episode is so good. It is so creepy. It's really scary, but it's also really compelling. Like, I felt like I could not look away, except for all the gross parts. I could totally look away for that. But all the rest of it, it was like, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? What's going to happen? And them walking through the creepy corridors, I was like, anything could jump out at them. You know, I was ready for a jump scare, which I'm so glad they didn't do. This episode was just really, really good. I really enjoyed it. What about you, Andrea?
This episode, you know, I've always loved watching it. So I've always been like, woohoo, it's the de-evolution one. But like, I'm so glad that we got to really break this one down because it is quite ridiculous. And I think, you know, the biggest tagline here is stop touching things with your bare hands, number one. And number two, that's not how that works. But I love this episode. It's so fun. It's so far outside of the normal Star Trek where it's like, you know, we've got a diplomatic issue on Romulus and we've got to, you know, talk to Sarek for 4.5 really boring hours or whatever. Like this one is, it's a very action-packed episode. It took me a very long time to actually write all my notes on it. Like normally my notes are like 4 to 5 pages per episode. This was like 7.5 going on 8 pages. Cause like just so much is happening in every single scene. Even the early scenes with sick bay being like packed with people, and Barclays being a hypochondriac, and then Worf and Deanna in 10 Forward having that weird exchange while he's like eating all that squelchy food, right? Like there's just so much happening in every scene. I really, really love this episode. I hate the spider jump scare. It's really terrifying. I did actually post on our social media at the TNG Podcast on Instagram, like a ton of behind the scenes photos, because there are so many of these monster looks were done in like poor lighting, which kind of helps advance the story and like, powers out. But there are a lot of behind the scenes looks where like the makeup artists are standing there and they're finishing the looks, and you can see all of Reg's look. And he even had a spider arm, which I didn't realize. He had like a leg, and like Worf's uniform was like busting just from all the like spikes and everything. So we're at the TNG Podcast on Instagram. Check us out. You can see all these really amazing behind the scenes looks. So the monster makeup, they went like level 10,000. It was such a fun episode. I really, really love it. Yeah.
I can't wait to see those. Andrea does all the Instagram posts and I look at them. So I can't wait to see those. It sounds so interesting.
Thank you. Sometimes life catches up with me and then I'm like, oh no, I forgot to do a post for these 2 episodes. I'm like, oops. But yeah, when I remember, it's like I put them all in there. But Pip, if people want to hear more from you, where can they find you? Do you have any pluggables you want to plug?
I am also on Instagram, where I can often be found spamming you guys on
with
your,
the most
account.
Brilliant, funny, like things on Instagram. They crack me up every time.
But my handle, is that the right word?
Yeah.
Is Soong type Hobbit with underscores in between each word.
Yeah, and that's like Noonien Soong, right?
Yeah, so Soong with a G.
Type Hobbit. Well, Pip, thank you so much for being on with us. This was such a marathon episode, but like I don't even want to cut any of it because it was so funny.
Oh, you will.
I don't know. It was really like silly and fun and ridiculous. And if you really, really want, I can cut the like soy milk story if you don't want it out there. But I think it's pretty awesome.
But we mention it so many times, it's going to make it even weirder.
It's fine. I'm already ashamed of myself. It's fine.
Shouldn't be. Anyway, thank you so much for being on with us. This was so much fun, and I'm so glad you got to be on another episode. It's a treat to have you every time. Guys, thank you so much for nerding out with us. Next week, we're breaking down Season 7, Episode 20, Journey's End. We will see you next week.
Bye. Thanks for geeking out with us. Be sure to join the crew at thetngpodcast.com to be the first to know when we do our live shows or host events exclusively for our members. We'll see you next time.